Welcome to the Shun podcast, where we expose religions that use shunning as a tool to control people. Some quick business before we get started. As you know by now, I offer one on one coaching to help people recover from life in these high control groups. I work to help people grieve the past, find themselves, and then find the life that they actually want, not just the one they were given. I'm actually offering something special, so if you want to work with me, now would be a good time. I'm actually offering pay what you want pricing. That's not something you see very often, but I want to work with more people. I want to try to help more people. So, when you look at it, traditional therapy locally is usually $100 plus per session. Online therapy is usually $80 or more. I typically charge $50 for coaching, which most people find reasonable, but I'm actually letting you decide the price. So the minimum is actually $20, but you decide from there. And by doing so, I'm hoping that I can help more people. So if you're feeling unhappy or stuck, send me an email at shunnedpodcast@gmail.com or reach out through any of the websites that I have, whether it's shunnedpodcast.com, xjwhelp.com, or whatever. And let's start working together. We already lost so much time in these groups. You can certainly do some healing alone, of course. But, when we work together on things, we can often heal a lot faster. And, we can also process things together, challenge perspectives, get new tools, find ways of different ways of looking at things, find acceptance, kind of go through this grieving process together. And in the end, more and more people have been reaching out for help, and seeing people that I work with actually start to find their voice, to make big changes in their lives, to be who they've wanted to be, or to just be proud of who they are. That's the best feeling in the world. Speaking of seeing people become who they are, or be able to speak to who they've been, today we actually have another brave person that's reached out to tell their story as part of the process of healing. It can be very cathartic to share your story with other people, to feel seen, heard, validated. So let's go on a journey with today's guest. As you listen, look for the lessons, look for the ways that maybe your story relates, and maybe you can learn about what has worked for this person, or maybe what hasn't. Maybe it's something that you can pull into your own life. If you were never involved in these groups, I get emails from people that just listen because they find these stories interesting or they find them inspiring. So please help spread the word. These aren't just cult stories, these are human stories. So many of the things that were experienced by the guests of this show are found in other areas of life. So share these episodes and let's help shine a light on the human experience. What's really going on in this world? You never know who it might help. So without further ado, let's go ahead and meet today's guest.
My name is LaShanda. I'm 43. I was a Jehovah's Witness, and I am shunned.
All right, LaShanda, so how'd you come to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the first place? Were you born in?
No, actually, I wasn't born in. It's kind of a weird story. So, my mom and dad, or my dad actually, um, knew a woman before he went to the Korean War. So when he came back from the Korean War, he moved back to the city. He just got back in touch with her. And she had actually became a Jehovah's Witness. So after my mom and dad's divorce, um, he had us to start studying with her. So nobody in my family is a nobody, grandma, aunts, uncles, nobody in my family was a Jehovah's Witness at all before my dad had us start studying with this particular person.
Wow, that is interesting. Post divorce and then back to this lady to start studying. So did he start studying as well, or did he just kind of want it for his kids?
He just wanted it for us. My family isn't particularly religious. They're sort of like the big holiday religious kind of people, like the
Mm-hmm.
Christmas and Thanksgiving and stuff. But they were never really big on like going every Sunday or anything like that. It was just he wanted us to have a moral compass, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of stuff happened before we started studying with this woman that offer the Jehovah's Witness, because the Jehovah's Witnesses kind of offered a little bit of stability after everything that we had went through. Um, so I guess a little backstory. Um, so I have 11 brothers and sisters.
Oh, wow.
I'm, yeah, I'm number 10. My dad was married 3 times, and my mom is actually his last wife. Um, there's quite a bit of an age gap between them. My mom was 24 when I was born, and my dad was 42. Um, he was My dad's side of the family is from Alabama. They came up between, I think, like in. Do you know what the Great Migration is? Are you aware of
No,
that at all?
no, I do not.
So the Great Migration happened between 1916 and 1970, and it's basically when a lot of blacks from the South moved up north
Oh,
for
okay.
jobs.
Okay.
And so they actually moved during that time frame, and that's how they ended up in Michigan. My mom was actually born in Germany. She is a German citizen, actually. Um, her mom married an American soldier, and they got married and eventually settled in Michigan as well. So my mom and dad met eventually, obviously, and had me and my younger brother.
Mm-hmm.
And then we moved to a city. It's called Jackson, in Michigan. It was pretty middle class, nice neighborhood, kids riding their bikes on the streets, stuff like that. I got my tongue stuck to a pole in the wintertime. My my brother had a big wheel. We had family dinners, that kind of thing. And then I was raised with my older brother and sister, which were the kids of my dad's second wife.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so that's why I said it's a little complicated. There's a lot that goes into us actually starting to study with this woman when we moved, to when my dad got us started studying with this woman.
Okay.
So let's see. The big thing that happened was that when I was younger, so I wasn't really in school yet. My mom actually loaded all 4 of us kids. So myself, my younger brother, my older brother, my older sister, loaded us into a car, and we took a road trip to Colorado. I found out later that she had actually kidnapped us.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I wasn't in school, so I don't know too much, like, about the circumstances of it, like what made her do that. So I wasn't any older than about 6 or so. Um, what I do remember, from that time is, like, um, my dad showing up, and he was like crying. Um, there was a lot of crying involved. I think my mom chose Colorado because she had family, in Colorado, so that's why she went there.
Yeah, it makes sense.
But it took, I believe, a year, I want to say, for my dad to find us, um, once my mom took us.
Wow.
Yeah. So she had actually taken, because she had taken my older brother and sister, which were not her children. Um, she was actually, um, put in jail for a short time for that. My dad didn't press charges or anything, and she eventually got out. Um, but my dad had sold the house and everything, so this, like, little sort of perfect ish, as far as I knew, life that we had as a kid where that I had as a kid, where we kind of were all growing up together, and it was sort of a nuclear family, kind of ended at that point,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah, that when the wife runs off with the kids, that'll kind of do that. Uh
Yeah, so
d-
it was a lot.
yeah.
um after my dad found us, um we actually went to go live with my older brother, who was from my dad's first marriage. So we lived with him for not very long. I think it was just like a transitional sort of thing. Um, and then my dad actually had a nervous breakdown once he got us all back. And we ended up, my brothers and sisters ended up being separated. So myself and my younger brother went to go live with one aunt. And then my older brother went with another one of my aunts, and my sister went with another aunt. So my dad also comes from a big family. There's 13 of them. So, and they're all really close knit. So that that was sort of the precursor to us getting involved with the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah, I mean, wow. Jehovah's Witnesses, obviously, as we all know now, they prey upon the vulnerable. That
Yeah,
they promise and offer some sense of stability. I say that in air quotes because obviously it's not stable, as you find
right.
out once you get in. But it looks that way on the surface, and uh, you had so much instability there. You all were vulnerable and just children as well. Um,
Yeah.
that's a lot to go through. So how old were you at this point? I mean, you were kidnapped at 6, so then your dad has a nervous breakdown. Your kids are separated. How old were you when you started studying?
Um, I think I had started the second grade.
Okay,
So maybe, I don't know how old that is.
7ish, something like that, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, somewhere around there. I know
Wow,
I was in the second grade
wow.
because I specifically remember it was in the second grade because that was back when we had to stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance
Mm-hmm.
in the morning. And I specifically remember that because my dad came to the school and said that we couldn't do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, wow.
And that's, yeah. So even, I think he, later on in life, when I had talked to him, and I would talk to him like before he passed away, I would ask him sometimes like why he never really got involved with the Jehovah's Witnesses or why he never got baptized. And his answer was always, I'm not a hypocrite. I don't know what that meant.
Mm.
I don't know if, I don't know what he did before me, obviously. Like most of us, we don't know what our parents did before
Right.
we came on the scene, sort of. So I'm not sure what that meant, but that was always his answer when I asked him about like why he didn't come to the meetings or why he didn't participate in sort of the study we were having.
Well, that's
And that was
interesting.
always, yeah. And I'm sure, some of it from like his time in Korea probably played a part in it
Oh, I'm
as
sure.
well.
Because a lot of times when you ask people who are kind of witness adjacent, who are around it a lot and don't really take a stand for it, but seem to kind of maybe believe at least some of it, a lot of times the reason that they don't take a stand is because there's something they're involved in currently. And they just feel
Right.
like they can't live up, morally or whatever to the Jehovah's Witnesses. But I could also see where, you might have things in your past that you regret that maybe you have a hard time letting go of that could keep you from taking that stand as well.
Oh yeah, sure. Because like, once my when my dad had passed away, um, my mom actually, she we'll get into that too, but she actually put his criminal record in front of me. I was maybe 13. I think it was 13 or 14 when he passed away,
Okay.
and she had gotten a copy or had a copy of his criminal record, and she put it in front of me and was like, "See, this is your dad. This is who your real dad is." So, I mean, I to this day, I don't know what was on it because I never really looked at it, but I assume that, the reason for him not getting involved in the Jehovah's Witnesses probably had something to do with, whatever was on his criminal record.
Oh, wow.
So that's just my assumption. I don't know for sure, obviously, because like he's not around for me to ask, but that's just my assumption anyway.
I understand.
So let's see. So blah blah blah. Okay, so we're back in with my so once my dad got out of the hospital, he was in the hospital for his breakdown. We all actually went to go live with him. So all four of us kids went to go live with him. The area that we lived in, there was a lot of family. So my grandmother lived across the street. My paternal grandmother lived
Hmm.
across the street. My uncles lived across the street. Like I had cousins and things that were really close by. So there was a lot of family around, and the I guess the witnesses, because we had so much family, the witnesses didn't really play that big a part in our life. So that she would come over, the woman we were having the Bible study with, out of the Live Forever book, I think it was.
Oh yeah,
Um, yeah, the red book.
I remember that one.
um, yeah, she would come over and we would do a study, but that was the extent of our involvement in the Jehovah's Witnesses. So we didn't go to the meetings, at least not early on. We didn't go to meetings. We didn't go out in field service. Um, we didn't do any of that. She just came over for an hour to teach us about the Bible and, you know, don't steal and be good kids and, don't lie to your parents and, don't hit your brothers and sisters, stuff
Right.
like that. Um, my dad, he ran sort of a strict house. Um, he he would stand at the bottom of the steps and yell up at us, and he would say, "Let's go, let's go, let's go." Just during the school year, because we got 15 minutes in the shower, and then we had to come downstairs and eat because there were four of us.
Yeah.
So we got 15 minutes in the shower. It took us an hour to get ready. We'd come down and eat, and then we walked to school. So I'm sure that is also from my dad's time in the army.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure he was running a tight ship trying to get everybody, where they need to be on time.
Oh yeah. But I mean, like, it wasn't, at least from what I remember, and obviously like you forget a lot of the bad things that happen, and remember the good things, but from from what I can recall, it was a pretty, I guess, average-ish childhood, except
Hmm.
for being kidnapped.
Yeah.
Um, except for that part. Um, it was a big change though to go to school in the inner city, because my brothers and sisters were some of the only mixed kids, um, in the city at the time.
Okay.
Detroit is, unfortunately, especially at the time, is very segregated. Um, the the history of race relations in the city, has never been great. It's obviously getting better, but at the time, it was something different. I mean, I definitely don't have anything against the kids or anything that I went to school with, because we looked different than them.
Right.
Um, but like I would get called names and things like that, and whatever. So I never really had any really good friends at school. Most of my friends were family, like
So
my
that's
cousin.
so that's interesting. So you were getting picked on and such, and it was more uh, because of the way you looked different than those kids, instead of the fact that you were were doing Jehovah's Witness things that made you different.
Right, because even
Interesting.
even at even at the picking on for being a Jehovah's Witness actually didn't come until I was about in like the fifth grade,
Okay.
like the sixth grade. Um, like I said, it was mostly just because I looked different, but I wasn't really too worried about having friends at school, because I have like 35 first cousins.
Oh my
So
goodness.
yeah.
Wow.
So I wasn't really too worried about having friends at school. And all my cousins were all sort of in the same age, you know. So those are the people that I played with,
Yeah.
as a kid. Let's see. I guess the biggest change, especially as it regards Jehovah's Witnesses, is when I hit fifth grade.
Okay.
Um, in fifth grade, a new family started in our school. They were Jehovah's Witnesses, as a mom and dad, and two girls. and the older girl, she was in my class, um, and she was just sitting there like in a chair, and she just looked alone, I guess. So I walked up to her because she looked a little bit like me, like she was light skinned like me, which they call like high yellow or red bone. I don't know if you've ever heard those terms.
No, I haven't. No.
It's just something that, like, within, I guess, the Black community, they call like lighter skinned people.
Okay.
Um, so obviously, if like you're yellow, they call you high yellow. If you have a reddish undertone, they call you red bone. I don't know if people still do that now. I hope not, but that's what it was at the
Mm-hmm.
time. So she looked like me. She was light skinned like me. So I just went over and introduced myself, and I actually told her, just come sit with me because we're both yellow and we need to stick together. It was just a very weird thing to say to her, and we talked about it actually a little bit ago, and she just thought it was just so weird, and that I was just like this weird little kid that had come up to her to say hi. But we actually became really good friends.
Awesome.
um, yeah, we actually became really good friends. She's the first person like I ever spent the night at, like, over her house. My dad, because of us being kidnapped earlier, he never let us spend the night over at anyone's house.
Oh, I can
Um,
imagine that's got to be a huge like a trigger for him
yeah, we
to
were
have his
we
kids
were
gone.
exactly. Like, I wasn't like allowed to go really anywhere outside of sort of my block neighborhood.
Yeah.
Um, so like even if we went to the store, he would be like, "Okay, well, I expect you back in this amount of time." Um, when we went to the store, because he was a smoker, when we went to the store to get his cigarettes, which you can't do anymore as a kid, you can't go buy your cigarettes anymore.
It was a different
But
world
we would,
back then.
I I know, right? And like the guy at the gas station, like he knew us, and we would come in, and he'd just hand us my dad's cigarettes, and we'd hand him the money, and off we went.
Yeah.
But he knew us, and to get to that gas station, we had to walk past my grandma's house, and there was always like an uncle or something sitting on the porch. So we were always sort of under the eye of family,
Mm-hmm.
and we weren't allowed, like I said, to stay the night at someone's house or even get a ride home from school. Um, so I just, as an example, I guess one time I got this girl, the one that I met in fifth grade. Her parents were like, "Hey, do you want to ride home from school?" And I said, "No, no, I don't want to ride. I'm good." They're like, "Oh no, it's raining. We don't want you to walk home in the rain. Just go ahead, get in the car. We'll drop you off." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I got in the car. They dropped me off in front of the house. My dad was standing on the porch because he'd stand on the porch and wait for us to, see us walk home from school.
Right.
And he saw me get out of the car,
Mm-hmm.
um, across the street, and I got in trouble immediately. Like, immediately. So when we would do something bad, my dad would give us a lecture out of the blue Aid to Bible Understanding book. I don't know
Really?
if you Yes, we got lectures out of that. I would rather get beat with a switch
Yeah.
than get a lecture from that book. I
Wow.
don't I don't know how he got it. I don't know who or why he thought it was a great idea, but we would get lectures, and we would always get like one or two tries of messing up before we would get like a whooping, because he had this belt, a leather belt that we would get a whooping with on our hands, and we get like five hits or something on our hands. So like that was his normal like disciplinary sort of style.
Mm-hmm.
But when I got out of that car and I walked up to the house, I immediately got a whooping for that.
Yeah.
And he was just like, "You better never, ever." get in anybody's car ever again. I never want to see you near anybody's car. And it put the fear of God in me, because I'm like, oh, like I was I didn't know I had done anything wrong. And I was so young when the kidnapping happened that I wasn't really aware of what had happened at that time either. So I had no understanding as to why he was so upset. I thought it was just because I had a friend, you know?
Uh, yeah, yeah, because you're interpreting it through your lens, and he's projecting his own insecurities around all of this onto you
Right,
as a child.
right.
Yeah, that those kinds of confusing situations are hard when you're a kid.
Yeah, for sure. So I have to say that was probably the only time I can probably count the number of times I've actually got like a whooping like that.
Right,
Um, so it wasn't something that was the norm, I guess,
right.
in the house. The norm was this long ass lecture from the eighth Bible understanding book. And it wasn't just like like if you did something, like literally all of us had to stand there and get lectured to. So I hated when my brothers and sisters screwed up, because I knew that meant I was going to have to sit there and go through a lecture because of something they did.
There's no better way to make your kids love the doctrines of Jehovah's Witnesses than to lecture them for long periods of time for books for things they didn't even do. That's terrible.
Last, they lasted so long, or at least maybe it felt like it did when I was a kid. It
Yeah,
felt when I was a kid like they lasted for hours. I like as a kid, I'm sure I felt like it lasted like 6 or 7 hours, but it was probably only like 20 minutes.
right.
So yeah, but like I said, he was pretty even tempered, I guess, with us. Um, outside of that situation, he wasn't a big yeller. He never really yelled at us for anything like that. During this time, my mom actually had visitation with my younger brother and I. So we went to go see her every other weekend, probably until all, that persisted until my dad passed away. We went to go see her every other weekend,
Okay.
um, because the courts gave my dad full custody of us kids.
Sure. And I'm sure those weekend visits were somewhat supervised given her past.
I I think in the beginning I know they were, but as time moved on, they weren't.
Oh, okay.
Um, because once the divorce, like I said, because I was sort of really young. I'm sorry to be jumping around and everything.
Oh, it's okay. It's
But
complicated to put a story together, in a life with so many things going on at once.
yeah. So I guess after my dad got custody of us, there was, court appointments. I don't know if you've ever been through a divorce, or, people who are listening have been, but we had to see like therapists and
Hmm.
counselors. Um, and then we saw the judge, and the judge asked us who we wanted to live with, which is a highly inappropriate question to ask a child.
Hmm.
Um, and I said I wanted to live with my dad. Not necessarily because I wanted to live with my dad. I mean, like, obviously, like, I love my dad, but more so because I wanted to stay with my brothers and sisters.
Sure.
Like, that was what was important to me, as I want to be with my brothers and sisters. Um, so once the divorce was finalized, and I remember this so clearly, and it kind of puts my relationship with my mom in a nutshell. Um, she came to pick us up for our visitation, and we were sitting in her house at the dining room table, and she was just sitting there and she was crying. And I'm like, I asked her, I was like, "What's wrong? What's the matter?" And she said, "It's your fault. You didn't want to live with me." And I just remember feeling so hurt that I had disappointed her because it wasn't really about the parent for me.
Right.
It was about my brothers and sisters and my like 35 first cousins and my aunts and uncles. Like that's what it was about. But I remember her sitting in that chair and blaming me basically for not getting custody of us.
Hmm. And I
And
guess that goes to the nature of the question: where do you want to live?
yeah, and it was an inappropriate question to ask, to begin with, and to put that much pressure like on a little kid, and then have these adults who should be adults make those decisions. Um, and I feel like that's something that is kind of persistent, I guess, through my life is adults who sort of abdicated their responsibilities as parents,
Mm-hmm.
really. Um, so that was a difficult time. We did eventually, get past that, but we still, went and saw her every other weekend. We had good visits. Um, she lived on a lake. We had a dog. We would go, me and my younger brother would go on adventures with our dog. So I mean, there were definitely some good times sprinkled in all of this kind of origin story, if you will.
Right.
Um, but yeah, so it was just a very memorable part um, in my life.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, and it's kind of unfair of your mom to blame you for this. Your mom's the one who ran away with the kids.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
she's got to take responsibility for her own actions regarding that.
And as I've gotten older, and especially now that I'm living with her while I'm in sort of this transition period, I've gotten to learn a lot about her, um, and how she operates, to be able to let a lot of that go.
Mm-hmm.
It's still difficult, it's still difficult. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Um, but I kind of see where she is coming from. I see why she does the things she does. Um, like her father was a just bigot. Like he was a horrible person. He kicked my little brother down the steps and called him the N word. Um, he I remember he was gonna sell a truck once, and the guy that came to buy the truck was black, and my mom said, "Well, I'm not." My mom told me he refused to sell the truck to the guy because he wasn't gonna let his truck be driven by an N word.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't. As he got closer to dying, and my mom would show him pictures of my younger brother's kids, and one of them looks super. I mean, she's got blonde hair, blue eyes, whatever. So she looks like he expects children to look.
Right.
So he would see her in pictures, and that's probably the only one of my mom's kids, grandkids, or whatever that he had any warm feelings toward. Um, so I
Yeah,
didn't really,
that's super messed up.
yeah, we didn't have too much, we didn't have a relationship with him at all. Um, I never call him my grandfather at all. He's my mom's dad.
Right. Right.
Um,
But you can see why
so
your mom has had some of the issues that she has, and it's important to be able to understand sometimes the totality of people and where they come from, instead of just judging them on particular actions. I'm not a huge
exactly.
I don't like it when people say that, like, label people as good people or bad people. I just kind of see people as healthy people or unhealthy people, and a lot of times unhealthy people end up hurting people. But that's because a lot of times of the pain that they've been through, and when you bump up against them, all they have to spill over onto you is dysfunction and pain, because that's what their cup's full of. So
Exactly.
it's unfortunate. You know, all these things trickle downhill, and then you have innocent kids who end up getting caught up in it. And it's a shame that happens, but you can also understand how it happens and see that a lot of times it's not malicious intent. It's just hurt people
Right.
that end up hurting people.
Exactly. And I've learned you kind of you have to love people where they are
Yep.
and not where you want them to be. So that's, it's been a journey definitely with her.
Yeah.
Um my grandmother on my mom's side, completely different woman. Like she was super amazing. She was super German. She made bread balls and apple strudel, and like she was just like a super German woman. She
You had
spoke
me at apple strudel. She can do no wrong if she makes that.
like, I mean, she would do like roast and she canned fruits and stuff because she grew up during like the world after World War II.
Right.
So they had to learn how to do all these things. So she was a good person, from what I remember. I know her and my mom had a contentious relationship, but that didn't really have anything to do with me really.
Right.
Um, so where was I? Yeah. So fifth grade, I met this JW girl, and that's when I started being more serious,
Hmm.
I guess is the word. That's when I started saying, well, if she's going to stand outside for birthdays and Christmas and all of the stuff, then I guess I'm going to go sit in the library with her because she's my friend.
Oh, okay. So you weren't just so you had mentioned that you became friends with her, for the fact that I'm just going to use the term because you use it. You were both high yellow,
Right.
and so first of all, a shame that people have to be separated by that, but it's what kids separate people by what you wear, what you look like, just every if you're good at games or
Yeah.
sports or it's what we
It's
do.
categorize people. It's just part of human nature to
Yeah.
put people in categories.
Oh yeah, we're
So
very
I mean,
tribal.
I don't feel one way or another about it, and especially at the time, it never bothered me because it was just like normal,
Right, right.
you know.
But the point being that she was also one of Jehovah's Witnesses then, right?
Yeah.
Ah,
Uh huh.
gotcha. Okay.
Her and her sister. Her dad was an elder, and her mom was like was a pioneer, sort of that elder pioneer wife combo.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she was very she was super straight A student, um, very straight and narrow, sort of like the perfect JW girl,
Sure.
I guess. Um, so it was about this time that I met her that I started feeling a little bit of pressure to um, go to the meetings with the woman that we had been having a study with, because during all of this time, from the first grade to or first second grade up until um, eighth grade or seventh or eighth grade, we had been having this weekly study with this woman. So she was the Jehovah's Witness were always sort of like weekly were in our lives, coming into our home, and we were studying with her. So I at that point decided, I think it was in the fifth or sixth grade, I decided I wanted to go out in field service. Um, so she took me, the woman we were studying with,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a horrible experience.
That
Oh
never
my
got
god!
better, right?
Oh my god! First off, I hated field service. I always hated field service. Like at the time, I didn't know I hated field service because it was my first time.
Yeah.
But throughout life, even when I was pioneering, I was never a big fan of it. Like I just went to kind of hang out with people because I didn't I didn't have that many friends, so I figured if I go out in field service, like maybe I'll make friends or
Sure.
something.
It's social,
So
or you hope it's
yeah,
going to be social.
yeah, it was super social for me. Thankfully, in my entire time as a Jehovah's Witness, I've never converted anybody. So I have that
Few
feather in
do.
my cap.
Very few
I have,
do.
I have that feather in my cap to be proud of.
Yeah.
Um, so I 100% remember the first time I went out in field service. It was in the summer, and it was back when like the awakes and watchtowers were like super thick.
Hmm.
Like now they're like paper, but when a watchtower was like 30 pages and like full of scriptures and everything.
Hmm.
And the article, the cover article was about abortion. Don't I have no idea why this woman thought it was good for me to offer this magazine to people on the from door to door. No clue. So I
We
go up to
all did it.
the and
But
I'm like
it is
in the
cringeworthy when you think about it, in retrospect. A bunch of kids going out handing out magazines on abortion.
right, like why abortion is wrong when I'm in like the fifth grade and I literally know nothing about nothing.
Right.
So it was ridiculous. So I go up to this door and knock on the door, and the woman comes and she sees me, this little, bright-eyed, red-faced kid, and I must have said some sort of like introduction or something and offered her the magazine, and she looked at it and then she looked back at me and she just said, "I think I know more about this than you do," and gave it back to me. And that was my very first time out in field service.
Oh, wow. It's foreshadowing the rest of your life, right? Oh,
But
goodness.
you know what the funny thing is that field service was actually one of the main reasons I ended up leaving.
Hmm.
A woman I met in field service actually set me on the path to leaving the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Hmm.
And I had these like really odd experiences in field service, um, that were just sort of like these little nuggets of doubt that these random people sort of dropped on me, and they just kind of stayed with me. So there was always I think there was always a little bit of doubt there. Um, and I just sort of filed what they said because, I mean, she was right. I didn't know anything about abortion. Why am I offering this woman this magazine? It makes no sense.
Right.
So, that was, I think, the last time I ever went in field service as a kid. After that, I decided I didn't want to go anymore. Um, but we did start going to meetings more regularly. Like just us kids started going to meetings more regularly. Um, Mostly, like I said, because I was friends with this one girl. She was really important in me starting to take the Jehovah's Witnesses a lot more seriously. So by, I want to say, the eighth grade, I had I was going to the meetings regularly. I think I was even on the school. Um, I was an unbaptized publisher, I believe. It's all a little hazy, just because of what comes next. Um, so that was sort of my life for the next 3 years from fifth to eighth grade. I spent the week with my dad, went to school, did like family Christmases with my dad's family Thanksgivings. Like we still did all of that, but we also went to the Kingdom Hall
That's
because my dad,
interesting. So it's not
yeah, because my
quite as much of a shift in your life because you have
dad,
still this, quote, worldly side of the family where you're doing the holidays and such, so you don't have to give that up, but you are adding in all of the Kingdom Hall activities.
Exactly. Exactly. And because my family was so huge and we were so connected to each other, there was no, you're not going to come to family Thanksgiving. Like that was
Right.
not going to happen. Didn't matter what religion you were, you're coming to the family Thanksgiving, you know? And so, and we went down south to visit my family down there. And that was a shock for a city girl, let me tell you, because they had us like snapping peas and feeding pigs. And I just wanted to go back home.
Different type of celebration.
Oh my goodness. It was like anytime it rained, you had to turn off all the electricity because, they were scared the house might get struck by lightning or something. It was ridiculous, really. But it was a fun time. I mean, it was fun for a kid. Um, and so we had the school time, we had visitation with my mom. We went on trips with my mom, like we went to Disney World. And like I said earlier, um, we went across the country we did a cross country trip to California. I saw the Grand Canyon. Like, so there were really good times as well, during my childhood and
Sure.
all of this other stuff. So later, um, sometime after my dad passed away, I did find out, um, that so he would disappear. My dad would. Um, he would disappear like for a couple days at a time, like a weekend or something. Never in the winter or during the school year. It was usually in the summer, but he would disappear for a couple days. And it never really bothered me too much because we had our uncles. Like I said, I have 13 aunts and uncles. Um, so, they would always be at the house. So it never really um, stuck out to me too much
Mm-hmm.
at the time. But what I had found out later is that he was an alcoholic, um, and that he had schizophrenia. At least it was diagnosed as schizophrenia at the time. I don't know what they would have diagnosed it as now.
Oh wow.
I'm sure, I'm sure there's some PTSD in there, from the war and a lot of other things. But I found out, that he would leave and then he would go to bars and I found out that he had also tried to kill himself multiple times. Um, I also found out that he had tried to kill my one of his ex-wives. So all of this stuff was sort of happening, and I had no clue because one, we didn't really talk about it, but also my sort of basic needs, I guess, were taken care of. I had friends. My dad was there to help me with homework when I needed it, when we needed to, like during the school year. We never went hungry. We had friends, we had family, we had all of those things that are important to a kid, So you don't really think about, or at least I didn't think about because of my age, maybe. I didn't think about why he was gone for 3 days.
Well, I mean, immediately when you said that your mom took off and kidnapped the kids for a year, that immediately brought up a question to me, which is, I wonder what might have pushed her to do that. And I mean, you haven't
Yeah,
said, but I mean, obviously your dad had some issues,
yeah,
for sure. And so who knows what all was going on then.
right.
It just kind of shows too, you know, people are people. And just because you have, I'm not saying that like you all were wealthy or anything, but at whatever level of humanity you're operating, from a maybe a financial status, or it looks like you've got a lot of people around you that care for you. You've got friends and social uh, structures around you that, in the end, we're all just people, and some people have issues. Sometimes
Yeah,
behind the scenes that nobody sees, and those are some strong issues to be
yeah,
dealing with.
absolutely. Absolutely. So that's pretty much how my life went. Like I said, back and forth with my mom, summer trips, stuff like that, school. I loved school. Um, and because again, I have this new friend that's a Jehovah's Witness, I have more of that influence. Um, I was I was still never made fun of um, because of it. I know she was, um, because she took it a lot more seriously, obviously, than I did, because obviously, her parents are an elder and a pioneer, so
Right.
she has to. She did get made fun of quite a bit. I was one of two people that were friends with her during middle school. Um, she's also super competitive, which just rubs people the wrong way when you're in the sixth grade. Um, but not competitive with sports because, obviously the JWs are not going to get involved in that. But she was competitive with academic stuff. And so she always kind of had to feel like she was smarter than everybody. So she always had to get the A in the class.
Yeah, that doesn't make you friends.
Yeah. So, I mean, she was, and it just used to piss me off so much because I was like, I'm just as smart. I just don't care as much. 'Cause I was like, I don't care. So whatever. Um, but like in the eighth grade, I did actually get her into quite a bit of trouble when we were in school, when we were in middle school. Um, we got this brand new teacher, like right out of college, and he was the first white teacher that had ever taught in our school. Um, and all of the girls just thought he was lit like the cutest thing you could have ever seen in life. Like, Brad Pitt, Leonardo DiCaprio, like all just rolled into one person. And all of the girls had crushes on him. And so because I was a very I started a lot of trouble as a
You're
child.
an instigator, huh?
Was I never got caught, but I always started stuff constantly with my brothers and my sisters and cousins and stuff. I always started stuff. And because I was my dad's youngest girl, and I was the only one that actually called him dad. We didn't call my dad by his we didn't say dad, we called him by his first name. The same with my mom. We call her by her first name.
Hmm.
Um, I was the only one, maybe my older brother called him Pops, but I called him Dad. And I think I was the only one to ever call him Dad. And I was the only one he had a nickname for. So we had a really like tight relationship.
Hmm.
But yeah, I would always start trouble, but then I would always get away with it because I was my dad's favorite, like clearly, and I knew it. I knew I was my favorite. Like when I went to the store to get his cigarettes, I was the only one allowed to keep the change. Like when we got back, everybody else had to give my dad his change back, but I got to keep it. Like so they like I said, they all knew that I was his favorite. And so in school, I mean, I did the same thing. I started trouble and instigated stuff. It was never really like horrible stuff, but like with this new teacher, I stole his lunch and like hid it in one of the cabinets in the class, and she ratted me out because she couldn't take the pressure. It was horrible. She ratted me out, and I but not before the whole class was mad at me because we had to like write like I will not steal Mr. So and so's lunch like 100 times on paper. But and then he would drive a motorcycle to school in the summertime, which also, obviously made him literally the coolest person ever because he drove a motorcycle.
Oh,
But
sure.
I would go up to his motorcycle and put my foot really close to it so it looked like I was gonna kick it over and then run away. I was a horrible child. I just did all kind of just like little random stuff just to start trouble. Um, so I would get her in trouble with me, and we became friends, and it was a good friendship. She was fun, I guess. She was girly. she wore fingernail polish and I never did. And so she kind of helped me with like the girl stuff because I was raised by my dad, my dad didn't do girl stuff. um, he sent us over to my grandma's house to get our hair braided and stuff like that. So um, in 1990, so eighth grade, um, my uncle one of my uncles had passed away. And this is actually when the Jehovah's Witness, this actually is when the Jehovah's Witnesses really started getting more in my life. Because you know how they like to capitalize on trauma.
Oh yeah, I literally just saw the outline yesterday for the funeral talks they give.
Oh my god, I saw that too.
It's awful. It's so
Yes.
awful.
Oh my god, it was so the little. I think there was a part highlighted that said like, don't spend too much time um on the person, like no more than 5 minutes
Yeah.
talking about the person who passed away. I was like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, I think it even said it didn't it say something about how like you don't even want to make the person seem too good or something like the
Yes.
focus here
Oh,
needs to be about Jehovah's Witnesses stuff,
yes.
not the person.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And because then you can show how they had their exemplary lifestyle
Mhm.
um will bring praise on Jehovah. I mean, it's just like everything. They just co-opt these events in life and turn them into something just sterile
Oh yeah.
and
So they
and
did that for
un-
your uncle too, hey?
well, a little bit later. So my uncle he passed away, like I said, he passed away on September 7th of 1990. And I only know this because of what happened next. So in February of 91, my dad actually collapsed um, while he was out with friends, and he was diagnosed with lung cancer. He was 59 at the time.
Mm.
So he demanded that we not tell my mom that he had cancer. And between February and June of 91, we went on in my house like normal. My mom came and picked us up for our visits. She never knew my dad had cancer. My older sister got us to school, helped us with homework. My older brother made sure we were in bed on time. Of course, like I said, I have my tons of family around. And then in June, my younger brother, in June of 1991, my younger brother told my mom that my dad had cancer. And she decided she was going to come live with us to take care of my dad.
Okay, and he was okay with this?
I, I don't know. I think I think because he knew how advanced it was, maybe he was okay with it. Um, but it was not a great time because I mean they have such different parenting styles. Um, my dad was very, at least when it came to us, he was very very chill. Like we had chores, don't get me wrong. Like we had chores, and when we screwed up, we got in trouble, you know, and he was very strict with us, but I never felt afraid to talk to him about anything. I never felt like if I messed up that I would get in trouble.
Mhm.
Um, whereas my mom, she just, wow. Like she was, if you break something like as a kid, you're constantly breaking things as a child, glasses or whatever. She would go off and just yell at you, yell and scream. So there's two very different parenting styles that they had, and now all of a sudden they're combined back, again.
Right, and during a stressful time, in everyone's life when dad has cancer.
Yeah. And it was my first year of high school as well. So there's like all these changes going on. So that was June of 1991. So September 7th of 1991, so a year to the day of my uncle passing, my youngest uncle, who was just the apple of my grandma's eye, he had a heart attack and died in my grandma's backyard. Um, so everyone was really, devastated about that because it had happened a year to the day of my other uncle passing. So September 9th, it was my first or second week of high school. And my sister came to my homeroom because we both went to the same high school. She was in 11th grade, I think, or 12th grade. I think she was graduating because I think she was graduating. I think it was her last year. And she came to my English homeroom and got me and took me into the counselor's office and told me that my dad had died. Mm. So 2 days after my uncle, my dad passes. And
that's a lot of loss in in a short period of time.
Yeah, there's more.
Oh, okay. Spoke prematurely. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that all that was happening. I guess there's more to come. No, but
it's okay. So I remember like starting to cry, and my sister was like, "No, you don't cry. We don't do that. Wait till you get home." So I was like, okay. Now my sister at the time is like 16 or 17 years old. So she shouldn't have been the one to tell me my dad passed away. My mom should have done that.
Sure.
So when I say this, like this history of sort of abdicating her responsibilities as a parent, these are the kinds of things that I'm talking about,
Right.
So once my dad died, it was literal chaos in my house. So between September of 91 and December of 91, two more of my uncles and one of my aunts passed away.
Wow.
Yeah. One of them got hit by a car. One of them, I think, died of liver disease, maybe. I think her liver gave out. There's a lot of alcoholics in my family. I'm not sure how she passed away. And then another one of my uncles passed away. So in the course of a year or so, year and a half, I lost my dad, four of my uncles, and my aunt.
Wow. Like, you all were all close too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like when you have so much like trauma like that, at a certain point, your sort of your level for dealing with it is maxed out. And at that point, anything else can happen and it doesn't really affect you anymore. Like, it does, obviously, but because it's so much heartache and trauma, you just can't emotionally function.
Yeah, you become numb
anymore.
Yeah.
So, and it definitely affected how I interacted with like my friends and stuff when they had like family members that passed away. I would be like, well, it happens. That's what happened. People die. Because I had already dealt with so much, I didn't have any sort of compassion left for people who were going through the same situation.
Yeah, you ran out of emotional energy. I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
And there were so many changes. So in December of that year, my mom, now up until this time, my older brother and sister and my younger brother, we all lived in the same house. After my dad passed away, we still lived in our same house. Um, in December of that year, um, my mom took myself, my younger brother, and my older sister, and we moved out in the middle of the night. And when my older brother got home, no one was there.
What the heck?
And yeah, she moved us to another house. Um, there was a lot of fighting after my dad passed away. There was a lot of fighting between us kids and my mom, because like my older brother and sister, like they're not her kids, and they're 16, 17, 18 years old. They're not going to listen to her because they don't have to, you know? So there was a lot of fighting, not just like verbal, but like physical fighting that went on in the house between the time my dad passed away in September and the time we moved in December of 91. So most of the most of the uh, trauma, or not trauma, it's the wrong word. Most of the drama is what I meant to say, was between my mom and my older brother, because he moved his girlfriend in to our house. And my mom was not okay with it. And she couldn't throw him out because it wasn't her house to throw someone out of. Um, and he was not a minor. So there was nothing really that she could do. Um, so she bought a condo, which is where I'm sitting right now, um, and moved in with myself, my younger brother, and my older sister. Um, and then my older sister decided, this is some crap. I'm not going to stay here. So about a month after that, after we moved into the condo my mom bought, she actually left and went to go live with one of my sisters from my dad's first marriage. And I didn't see them again probably until I was about 19, I think. I did.
So, yeah,
Yeah,
that's a handful of,
yeah,
like, what was that, like 5 to 10 years, something like that?
yeah. So like my brothers and sisters that I had grown up with, my cousins, my aunts, my uncles, I didn't see them again for like 5 years because my mom would forbid them from coming over to our house.
Yeah,
And this is the time when the Jehovah's Witnesses take over.
of course they do. Of course they do.
So yeah.
So now you've lost people in your life, uh,
Hmm.
through death or through moves or whatever, family drama and such. And here's the good old J Dubs ready to save the day, right?
Right. And I think my mom um kind of went toward them because of the she needed help.
Right.
She needed help. She had two kids full time now, where before she just had us on the weekend. So there wasn't really too much discipline that she had to, she wasn't responsible for discipline or for us going to school and all of those decisions that you have to make when you're a full time parent, you know. And
Right.
granted, the reason she only had us on the weekend was another situation altogether. But I mean, she just didn't have those responsibilities, and she also didn't have the support system that my dad had, with his family and everything being close by. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that going and getting more involved with the Jehovah's Witnesses was something that she did to kind of help her find her way in figuring out what to do with us, really.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, because it couldn't have been easy, to all of a sudden be thrust upon with like two teenagers who just lost their dad, and I mean, my mom and I, we did not get along at all. Um, I mean, we got into physical fights where she didn't like what I was wearing, so she'd like try and rip off my shirt or like tear it off and make me wear something else. Or
Sounds reasonable.
I
Good
mean, that's
grief.
what
I mean, that's that's
I mean,
that's wild. Um,
that's like, do you not do that with your kids? Like, is that not normal?
I don't have kids, so maybe I have no right to say, but I'm pretty sure that that is not cool.
Like,
Yeah, fist fights and ripping clothes off kids and things. I mean, like this is wild. Like that's just not how healthy people behave with their children.
I mean, and I know she didn't, and that's why I say like now I'm when I was writing this, it was very exhausting when I was trying to figure out like the whole timeline of everything. It was very exhausting because these are a lot of things that I've kind of gotten past. Um, so I don't give them too much emotional energy or any really at all. So going back through all of this was it was very exhausting. I'm
Sure.
glad I didn't, but to kind of sort through things. But it it took a lot. I had to step away for a couple days before I could come back to it. Once I got to this point.
Sure.
Um,
Well, and that's part of processing what you've been through. A lot of people have been through a lot of things in life and they kind of try to walk away and just press forward and not look at it, but those feelings are still there. And
yeah,
as you look through them and process them, work through them, you can start to finally let them go. And um, not looking at them is not a healthy option. So, good for you for looking at these things, even though they hurt. Sometimes the only way
yeah,
around is through.
yeah, exactly. So, like I said, we didn't really get along that great. Um, she didn't really like anything that I did.
Sure.
Um, she didn't like my music. Um, she was My music was really all I had. Um, it's the only thing that kind of got me through. You're a teenager, you lost your dad, you're kind of going through like your grief and also angsty stage of being a teenager.
Oh yeah, and this is '90s music, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So what
So
was
like
it?
I mean, I listened to Bush.
Oh yeah.
Um, I listened to a lot of rock. I listened to Metallica. I also listened to a lot of ska. I listened to a lot
Yep.
of electronic techno,
Yep.
um, stuff like that. Um, that was my saving. That's what saved me. Really, is my music. Um, Now the my younger brother has and had a completely different relationship with my mom.
Right, but let me just point out that you just went
Yeah.
from being so you just went from your dad and you have a relationship where you're the favorite to
Hmm.
now you have a relationship your mom is the parent in your life and now you're no longer the favorite, and
Right.
that's a really tough transition. That's
Yeah.
awful to go from a parent who adores you to a parent who seems to see you as a problem.
Yeah. And I mean, that's how I felt like
Yeah.
around her, as I did feel like nothing I ever did was right or
Right.
acceptable. I really felt like she just did not like me,
Mm-hmm.
for whatever reason. Whether that's true or not. I mean, I do know that she loves me in her way, um, in the way that she's able. But at the time, it didn't feel like that.
Well, sure. It's oftentimes it's kind of more control,
Yeah.
which isn't a super way of expressing love. uh,
Right.
but
Right.
probably feeling out of control. She's struggling for control. And then, so she's becoming more and more one of Jehovah's Witnesses, which means that she's got to be, focused on appearance and control of her own family to keep you all in the quote truth. Right. So,
Right. And then, so when we moved over to this new place that she had found for us, that's when we actually started going to the Kingdom Hall on a regular basis and
mhm.
starting going out in field service on a regular basis, like every Saturday. Now, she never went. She is not baptized. She still smokes, but she is the most believing Jehovah's Witness you will ever meet in your life.
Well, of course, a lot of times you find that because the belief has to, like, it's like you have to compensate for the fact that you still smoke a lot of
Yeah,
times. So because you feel bad because you can't commit fully on the backside of it, you go super hard
yeah,
so that you can try to overcompensate for where you're falling short
exactly.
in what it is to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses.
And even now, I'm a couple days ago, she was outside like watering her plants or something. And I went outside and she had her cigarette like behind her back when she heard me coming. And I'm like, I looked at her, I was like, you don't have to hide your cigarette from me. You're grown up. You can do what you want. I don't care. Smoke, don't smoke. Like, it's not they aren't my lungs. That's fine.
Yeah.
And so even now she does the same thing. And a lot of it is because of um, my brother. So my brother's relationship with my mom is very different from mine. Um, and it has been from the beginning, really. He's always been given like more leeway. Um, I'm older than him, but his curfew was like 12 and mine was like 9:30 or 10 o'clock. Um, yeah, he had girls calling the house. I couldn't have boys call. Um, he could miss curfew and it would be fine. I missed curfew once by like 15 minutes and my mom locked me out of the house and I had to wait for my brother to get home before I could get in the house. So it's she has they have a very different relationship than I do, and he always would get on me and say like, why are you guys like this, like why do you guys clash so much? And I'm like, because she likes you better and she doesn't like me, if at all. At the time that's what I thought. Like, she doesn't even like me. So why would we get along? I don't like her either. you know and all the ridiculous stuff you say when you're 16 to your parents. I hate you, and slam doors and all that nonsense.
No, yeah, and fathers and daughters and mothers and daughters often have different relationships. Same with sons, right? And
Yeah.
it's a different dynamic.
So we started going to the Kingdom Hall over here more regularly. We had a study with an elder and his wife, um, also elder pioneer couple, had the perfect little 2.5 kid family. Um, they were born in, they had family in, all of that, and we were sort of the fatherless child charity case,
Yep.
um, which is great. Um, and so I kind of got, I guess, mentored, if you will, by a older lady who, she's amazing. She's if I was still a Jehovah's Witness, like, I would consider her to be my mom. Like, she was just such an amazing person. She accomplished so much in her life as a Jehovah's Witness, like non-Jehovah's Witness stuff, like career wise. Um, that I just looked up to her, and she was just an amazing person. I don't have any contact with her now, but she was just she really, really helped me a lot in the accepting Jehovah's Witnesses, and sort of finding some balance within myself to not be so angry all the time. We had book study at her house back when we had book study at your house.
Oh yeah.
It was the best. We had the best goodie nights. Oh my gosh, it was
I
so good.
I love that you just said it was the best, followed by we had the best goodie nights. Like that's why it was the best. We had the best goodie nights, right?
We had legit the best goodie nights of like any book study in my congregation. Like we had like one sister made the bomb banana pudding. Oh my god. It was so good that it would have to be hidden in the back until like the end because if it came out, it would be gone. And like you had to serve it out in dishes because otherwise people would just come and like take the whole thing home. And it was in those big like aluminum like
Oh
disposable.
yeah.
Oh my god, so good. Ugh. And then we had one brother who was like super country. Um and he would drive he jumped during D-Day at the beaches,
Oh wow.
and he had a wooden leg. He got his leg shot off, but he would drive in field service, and I always thought he was going to kill us because it was his right leg, you know, the one that does the gas.
Yeah.
So he would drive, and I was like, why is he driving? But he would bring to our goodie night like the most country things ever. Like ox, he would bring like oxtails and rabbit and raccoon and like all this weird stuff. So it was like the first time I ever had raccoon was when he brought it, and I was like, "What is this?" And I'm like, "It's greasy and hard to chew. It's like a raccoon." You know, it was insane. We would have game nights, and we had like like salsa parties where we would all get together and dance, and we had movie nights. So it was a really good um environment. Like
Yeah, you don't find that very often where people are really that big into associating with each other.
yeah, it was real. It was huge, and we had the meeting for field services at her house too.
Hmm.
So you know, on top of that, I always went out in field service with her. Like she was my field service partner. So I was around her maybe 3 to 4 days a week, and she really helped me to get through a lot of the grief that I had. Now I was still like an angsty kid. Like I still like listened to punk and you know did the whole black eyeliner thing, um, which went over great at the meetings. Um, but I was just like a really angsty kid. Um, so when I was like 15, 16, so 95, so yeah, I would have been like 16 or so. Um, that's kind of when the pressure started coming on me to get baptized. Um, I had started to make friends that were around my age, and then the girl that I met in middle school, she had gotten baptized like the year before, and it was kind of getting to that point where you know you start to become bad association if you're not baptized by a certain age.
Oh yeah.
So I was kind of getting starting to feel that pressure
Yep.
um, from that because I wanted to keep my friends because at that point it's like I had lost so much that I was like, well, I need to keep my friends. So my brother actually reached out to the elders at our congregation and said that he wanted to get baptized. So I said, well, I guess I'll get baptized too. And that's the thing is like I wasn't really into it for the belief system,
Few
you know?
are. Few are.
Even- And even like when people would talk to me, they would be like, well, you'll see your dad again in the resurrection and all of that. That was that was just like, yeah, I guess so. It wasn't I just I just had no energy for anything, but I just wanted to keep my friend.
Yeah, of
Uh,
course, of course.
so so we do the question, and I've always been a really good student. Like when I was in I skipped over this part, but when I was in high school, in the ninth grade, they had you take a it's not an IQ test. It's like they you do this testing for entrance into the honors program. Um, and I was always ahead in like my reading and all of that stuff. So I took this testing in the ninth grade because they gave it to all the students, and I got accepted into the honors program, um, which would start in the 10th grade. And it was a super hard test. So like of all the students in our school, like the ninth grade class, there was probably like 300. I went to a huge school. Um, there was probably like 300 students in the ninth grade class, and 10 of them got accepted into the honors program, I think.
Hmm.
And the hook was that if you complete the honors program with a 3.8 average or a 3.8 GPA, that you will get a 2-year scholarship, like fully paid to college.
Wow, that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, and you just had to maintain your GPA, and there were like, school events you had to do, like activities and stuff that you had to do. And so my sister was in the honors program, my older sister, and so was my older brother, and they both completed it successfully. And so my dad was very about education. Like he was very much about go to college, get an education. My grandmother on my dad's side was like voted teacher of the year, um, like nationwide. She was voted that. Our family on my dad's side was very like politically active. They're very much involved in the normal schools, which I don't know if you know anything about those. Um, so normal schools started after Reconstruction, after the Civil War,
Okay.
and they were basically they taught blacks and other non-blacks, obviously, to be teachers, so that they could go out and teach these newly emancipated people.
Okay, makes sense.
And one of the normal schools in Alabama actually became the University of Alabama. So a lot of the universities morphed into these different universities that you have down south.
Yeah, interesting.
So, so one of those was the norm. One of those normal schools is where um, my my dad's side of the family learned to become teachers and got educated. And so education, like I said, was really important.
Hmm.
So my dad, like I said, wanted us to go to get into this honors program, which we did, or which I did. And I was super looking forward to starting it in the 10th grade. And my mom took me out and put me in homeschool.
Mm.
Yeah, I hated it so much.
So, so you get accepted into the honors program with potential for scholarships and such, and so
Hmm.
basically that had to get shut down, right?
Right. Well, it's a lot of things. Is like my mom, she said, well, her thinking was, I don't want you going to this inner city school. I don't want to have to drive because now, since she had moved us to the other side of the city, she had to drive me to school every day. Whereas before I could just walk. And so, she didn't want to drive me to school. She didn't want me to go to that school. Um, so, and then she got advice from the elder that was studying with us to do homeschool. And the homeschool was taught by a sister who was literally the weirdest person I've ever met my entire life. Um, she was so eccentric. Um, I learned nothing. Surprised I graduated, to be honest, um, because it was just boring. Like it wasn't challenging. I know homeschool is different now, but homeschool at the time it was in it. I think it was like really in its infancy as being like accepted, um, instead of going to like a public or private school. So the curriculum wasn't really as challenging, I think, and standardized as you would find in a public school.
Oh,
There was a lot of self direction.
yeah. I mean, I went through the traditional program. I took honors classes, blah blah
Mhm.
blah. Did
Yeah.
performed well throughout my school career, and I remember seeing my sister, who's 20 years younger than me. I remember seeing her books when she was doing homeschool, and so it wasn't even really that long ago, probably five, six,
Hmm.
6 years ago. And I was shocked at the lack of challenge that they were compared
Yeah.
to the programs that I took in regular traditional public high school.
Yeah. And it showed when I went to college. Um, it showed. I was totally unprepared for it when I
Yeah.
went back to college. But while I was at homeschool, that's where I met these other friends who were also Jehovah's Witnesses, um, and kind of became friends with them. And then, like I said, the girl that I met in middle school. So my brother was going to get baptized, and I decided, if I'm going to keep my friends, I need to get baptized too. So we went to the Pontiac Silverdome, um, where the Lions used to play, and that's where I got baptized. It's a huge arena, um, and I got baptized. And when I got it, I didn't feel any kind of special way. I thought like, because my brother was like, well, and during the questions, they're like, oh, have you made your dedication to God? I'm like, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah, clearly I did, because otherwise, why would I be sitting here? Now, I didn't do any of that. I didn't pray. I wasn't like, God, here I am to do your service and blah. I didn't do any of that. I literally just got baptized to keep my friend. So when we did the questions, because I was a really good student, I knew all of the answers.
sure.
And that's really all they're looking for. Like they're looking for you to know the answers to the questions. They're not really, I mean, clearly, as we both know, they're not looking to know what you really think,
No, it's
you
can
know?
you regurgitate the information they've programmed into you?
Exactly. So, I knew all the questions. I go and get baptized. Um, I'm like, this is fine. Um, I remember I got out of the after I got out of being baptized, they had like these brothers there that were doing like interviews. I guess they were looking for like experiences and stuff to like talk about at the convention, like the next day. You know how they
Mm-hmm.
have like the little 2-minute experience thing. Um, so so they had these brothers there that were talking to the people who got baptized. And he's like, "Oh, why did you get baptized?" And
Oh yeah.
why they didn't unbaptize me at that moment, I won't know. I don't know. But I literally was like, "Oh, so I can still hang out with my friends."
You said that?
I told them that. Like, I was like, he looked at me. He just sometimes the truth comes out in a way that you don't expect. I was just like, I want it so I can, because my friends are getting baptized. That's why I'm getting baptized. And he just looked at me like, oh, God, this one isn't going to last. Like, he looked so disappointed that I didn't have some, like, I saw an angel who came to me and I decided to make the truth my own kind of story for him.
Oh yeah.
Like, I'm sure it was like the most disappointing answer he'd ever gotten. Um, So I get baptized and I go meet up with my friends, one of which was this girl that I met in middle school.
Mm-hmm.
And she gave me a card, and I still have the card she gave me. And she writes super tiny. So it was this card that was packed with words, and it just said, like, I'm glad we can continue our friendship and we can grow together in Jehovah's service, and some other platitudes that had to do with serving Jehovah or whatever. And it just really just reinforced the reason I got baptized, because I knew full well if I didn't get baptized, and the fact that her mom was a pioneer and her dad was an elder, I was going to lose my friends.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
You know? So, at that point, I started getting more into the Jehovah's Witnesses. I did street work, which is so creepy when you think about it. But we would get up super early, like 5 a.m., ungodly hour, and shower, get dressed in your long skirt and boots in the wintertime. And we would go to a gas station at like 6 o'clock in the morning and sit in the car and creep on people while they were getting their gas, and then like go up and talk to them and try and offer them magazines and books and whatever.
It
At
really
six
is
o'clock,
kind of stalkerish behavior. I used to do it too. I get it.
it's such a creepy thing to do. Like
Yeah.
like now, like if you were at a gas station and you saw a car full of people just sitting there, like it's creepy. Like I'd call the cops or at least tell the gas station attendant, you got some creepy people sitting in your lot here. Maybe you need to like check it out. But yeah, I did that for years. And then we did what we call drive-bys, which is a horrible, horrible name for it. Um, such a bad name. But we would pick a path, and we would be in our car. And this was mostly like young people. And in Michigan, it gets really cold in the winter, and you really don't want to get out of your car. So the four of us would be in the car, and we would drive by bus stops and like offer magazines to people from our car.
Oh, you didn't even have to get out of your car?
No.
It's like a drive-through or something. We had to like, I don't know which is creepier, because you were just driving up in your car, rolling down the window on people and flashing magazines, which is pretty creepy in itself. But we would like roll up on a bus stop, and like the doors would like fly open, and we'd all like go running after these people and like trying to offer them tracks at the bus stop, which that's got to be pretty creepy too. So, we like rolling up like the feds, jumping out in our suits and stuff. It's really weird.
It's so cringe. And then but this is in the hood though.
Yeah.
This is like, oh, don't talk to her because she's clearly a sex worker. So we need to go to the next person. Like,
well, that could have been found in my neighborhood too, but I understand what you're saying.
And we'd be like, or they'd be like, or we would like roll up on somebody and roll down the window because it wasn't clear that they were like a sex worker or like a pimp or something. And they'd be like, go away, I'm busy right now. It was just literally the creep. Oh God, it was so creepy.
This wasn't Jehovah's Witness related, but when I was a teenager, I hit a bottle in my neighborhood, and I heard like an explosion, like a glass bottle with my car, and I pulled over at the side of the street to see what was going on, because I thought I had blown a tire, and this lady was walking by, and she just like opens my passenger door and starts to get in. I guess she thought I was picking her up. And I was like, what are you doing? Get out of my car. So yeah, I get it. I get I get what you're talking about.
It was so cringe. It
Yeah.
was just like, oh, it was so cringy.
Yeah.
I and we were just like, we were preaching the word. Like it was just literally the worst.
Yep.
Um, so so the sister that I met who had the book study and everything at her house, she really kind of took me under her wing. Um, she was a pioneer. This is, I think, when she had been pioneering since they had been required to do like 120 hours. So she had been like a pioneer for a while. Um, and she really kind of convinced me to sign up for it as well. Um, which was, I don't know why I did it. Even when I put in my application, even when I put in my application, the brothers that I gave my application to were like, "Do you think this is a good idea for you to do?" I'm like, at that point, I'm like, "You just told me I can't do something, which means I'm gonna do it."
Oh yeah.
So my response was like, "Yeah, of course I can do it. What are you talking about?" So they're like, "Do you want to pray about this a little more?" So they're like consistently trying to dissuade me from becoming a pioneer because they knew clearly I would be horrible at it, which I was. So they accepted my application. I went to pioneer school in 2000, and I would say that that was probably like the height of my indoctrination. Um, I moved to where the need was great. I moved across the state, across Michigan by myself, to Kalamazoo, and I lived there for 2 years. And I pioneered, um, and had a roommate, and just kind of did all the pioneering things.
Like
After,
knocking on doors, um,
yeah,
knocking on
yeah,
more doors. Like there's not a lot of
exactly.
pioneering things.
Like, but the thing was, is like the congregation that I was at, and I've actually thankfully was lucky with this, like in my youth anyway, is like finding these congregations and then these families or people within congregations that were very welcoming and
Yeah.
open.
Yeah.
Um, and so when I moved there, a family who they had two boys, and I was a bad influence on the boys too because I taught them how to play pranks on each other. Um, and I would like when they were running through the house, I would trip them. Like, it was just I was because I have a younger brother. Like I said, I have all these like family members, and we all just play. You do kid stuff,
Sure.
and so like they were awesome. There was a time when I didn't have any money for food because I was a pioneer. I wasn't working, not consistently, and they would butcher. They lived on a farm, so they butchered a cow, and they came over and they brought me like a bunch of meat from the cow, and they brought me groceries. Um, and they even brought me furniture because like when I first moved there, I didn't have any furniture or anything. So they're a really awesome family that I really loved,
Yeah,
and
there's
that
certainly. I think that's a great example of there are good people inside. Inside the organization.
and I mean I went over there for dinner on Sundays, and I was part of their family study, and they were just really amazing people. Um, then so another sort of event that happened, that kind of led me to leave was I was out in field service, and this is while I was pioneering. Um, and I think it was when the Mankind Search for God book came out. You remember that book?
Is that the
It's like,
one that had all the different religions in it?
yeah, I think it had like a bunch of different, it had all the different religions, and it had like different religious symbols on the front, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was their distorted narrative of what everyone else believes. Yes, I remember that book.
Yeah, yeah. So that book had come out, and for some reason, we were placing it in field service. And the person I gave it to looked at it and gave it back to me, and he said, he was like, "Have you researched any of these religions on your own?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I gave the standard answer. Yes, I've researched." the Jehovah's Witnesses, and I've determined for myself that this is the true religion,
Hmm.
because that's the answer you give. And he's like, you need to research this. It's, they're going to mislead you. And it was another little moment that for some reason stuck with me, um, and kind of added on to this sort of like growing like seed of doubt that I had about Jehovah's Witnesses. Um, so I about a year, 2 years into pioneering, I got really, really sick. Um, I didn't know what it was. Looking back on it, it was probably some sort of like physical manifestation of all of the stress I was going through as a pioneer,
Yep. Happens all the time.
because I didn't have as a consistent job. I was by myself when I lived out there, other than my roommate. And I just missed my family, you know? And I came the what is it? What do they call it? What's the one that comes like every 6 months for the visit?
A circuit overseer?
Yeah, yeah. So the circuit overseer had come out for a visit, and they have like a special meeting with the pioneers or whatever,
Yep.
and I skipped it. And I was like, I'm not going to this meeting. This meeting is some nonsense, and I'm not going. And after, I got a bunch of phone calls, obviously, because they're like, where are you? We couldn't find you, blah, blah, blah. And I decided at that point to come off of the pioneer list. So I pioneered for about 2.5 years. Um, and then when I came off the pioneer list, another pioneer who was a guy, also came off the pioneer list. And he had recently like broken an engagement with his girlfriend. But we were friends, like we were platonic friends, like nothing, there was nothing between us, but I looked at him like a brother.
Hmm.
Um, and so we were just chatting sort of about his situation, and like breaking off an engagement and how it sucked and other stuff. And I got pulled to the side, and that was my first sort of experience with the rumor mill that in Jehovah's Witnesses. Um, because before that, because I didn't have any friends, no one had anything to start a rumor about with me.
Hmm.
So they came over and talked to me and was like, hey, we see you were talking to such and such after the meeting last night in the parking lot. So this was like a Thursday meeting. So, when you get out, it's like 9 and it's dark. So we were just chatting in the parking lot. And so they said, we saw you guys talking, and, he just got out of a relationship, and it wouldn't be a really good decision for you because he's a ministerial servant and he is trying to get back to be a pioneer. And I'm like, I was just having a conversation with this guy. Like, I'm not trying to jump him in the like congregation parking lot. We're just friends. And it's so irritating because it it makes you so ill-equipped to date,
Oh, yeah.
because you can't just have a friend who's a guy,
No.
you know. God forbid you sit next to a guy friend and next thing you know, oh, so you guys are dating?
Yeah,
No.
for many people, the person they marry may be the first member of the opposite sex that they've ever really talked to or spent much time with at all.
Yeah. And like I would have to say, like, I probably fall into that category,
Hmm.
because after they talked to me about that, like I didn't talk to him anymore.
Right.
Like, I didn't we didn't hang out anymore because I was just like, I don't want this drama.
Hmm.
Um, so because I had gotten sick, um, I ended up moving back home, and I got a roommate, um, who was just she was the best. We had the best time. Um, we used to drive up to Toronto all the time because that's where all the cute brothers were.
Hmm.
And we would go on road trips, and I mean, like we go to parties, because we had some friends who were West African, we had some friends who were Jamaican, and they would give like the best parties. So we would drive up to Toronto for that. Um, and we just had a good time, her and I, as roommates. Um, but then comes like this next thing where they the elders and Jehovah's Witnesses in general police human sexuality so hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's insane. So at the time that I had this roommate, so I'm like 23 at this point. I come back, I'm still like super out field servicey, just not a pioneer, but I was averaging about like 20-ish, 30 hours a month in field service and making all the meetings. I was on the school, like the whole 9 yards. And I had a job. I worked at a trauma center. There's a level 1 trauma center here that I worked at. Um, and I was working one day and I'm like, shoot, I have this talk to give, you know, on this Thursday night. So I have on like my cute little skirt and my cute little button down and my flats looking real cute. Um, and I get to the Kingdom Hall and I get up to give my talk. And literally the worst thing that could ever happen happened. My button down, my top like 3 buttons popped open.
Uh-oh.
And yeah, and I was like, "Oh my gosh." But the the like the way the stage is set up, they only can see you from the side. They can't see you like head on.
Right, right. Because you're talking to your householder, so everybody kind of just gets a side view. Yeah.
Right. So it's not like the brothers where they're like head on facing the audience.
Right.
So I was like, all right, cool. Like I can save this. So like my bra showed a little bit and I was like, all right, I'm talking, but like buttoning up my shirt. And I was just like, oh my gosh. So like talk is over. I get my counsel. They're like, you did great, blah, blah, blah. And I'm leaving. I'm about to leave and with my roommate because we drove together. And the brothers came up to me and they're like, hey, can we talk to you for a second? And I'm like, yeah, sure, I'm thinking it was about my time or something. And I told my roommate, hold up. And I went into the back room and there were 2 brothers sitting back there and they had their Bibles open. And I was like, okay, this is weird. Know what this is about. And they read a scripture to me from Psalms or Proverbs or one of those where it's like the guy is being dragged along by his nose to the house of prostitutes or something. Like I don't know how the scripture goes, but it's something along those lines.
Okay.
Apparently, one of the older sisters saw that my shirt popped open. So she told them and then made a complaint about my skirt being too short. And I sat there in the back room for like 20 minutes while they read scriptures to me and basically said that, I was dressed like a prostitute. And
Wow.
that, yeah, it was horrible. I left crying. I just went straight to the car and I was just crying. And my roommate was so pissed. She was like, "You are the most modest dressed person I've ever met in my entire life. Like, there's no way." And it's sort of this like theme that I feel like started with my mom because there was even things that happened with my mom where like I think I was like 17 or something. And I was 17, I was feeling cute and about to go out with my friends and whatever. It was summertime. I had on like a tank top and some shorts and I was waiting for them to come pick me up. And I was sitting on the steps, by the door, just waiting for the car to pull up. And she said, "You're dressed like a whore." And it
Yep.
killed me. It
Yeah.
killed me. So throughout my time as a Jehovah's Witness, and this wasn't the first time where I had been talked to, about either my body shape, um, or what I was wearing, because I can wear the same thing as someone else, but if your body shape is different, it's gonna look different on you. There's
Sure, of
nothing I
course.
so, I have been talked to multiple times from sisters, who said, "Oh, yeah, you shouldn't wear that," or so it's just like constant like policing
S-
of the female body, and it's like,
So, uh, just so you know, one of the most surprising things that I've found. So I have my own body issues. Let's say, okay, it's not just a female thing, for
right,
sure. And coming from Jehovah's Witnesses, that played a lot into some of those issues.
yeah,
And one of the things that I've found in coaching with and working with quite a few people, and also just in interviewing people for the podcast and such, one of the things that I guess kind of surprised me, because nobody really seems to talk about it a lot, is that a lot of ex Jehovah's Witnesses have major body issues, have been shamed their entire lives for their appearances, and Jehovah's Witnesses seem to kind of, like for young sisters, I mean, you have 13-year-old girls who are developing, and they are shamed
yep,
for that. There's been some who've been on the podcast and mentioned it, and it's really it's sick because that 13-year-old girl or that guy or whoever, like, they're not trying to be sexual. They just happen
right,
to have a body.
right,
And it's the organization that is over sexualizing everything and is so paranoid about it all that they think about it all the time. And it's
yeah,
the elders and the brothers and sisters in the congregation, like, it becomes this sick, weird, sexually repressive, body shaming game that, like, gets passed on from generation to overlapping generation. It's ridiculous, and a lot of people leave and honestly kind of hate their bodies and their physical appearance and are obsessed with it, because Jehovah's Witnesses are so appearance driven that they just ruin your view of yourself. So you are
yeah.
definitely not alone in dealing with this. It's pervasive throughout the cult.
And then, the other issue is that, like, with so much like repression and policing, when you do leave, you go to the complete opposite extreme. Like, there's that where you're just like, well, shoot, I wasn't allowed to try anything, so now I'm going to try everything.
Yeah, so
You know,
what it actually does is you're right. Sometimes it goes so people often go to one extreme or the other. The same with sexuality, because
mhm,
sexuality is so having sexuality, having genitalia is shamed. Having pleasure, enjoying anything in life is awful. So what you see is, with the way people dress or view their body, they go to one extreme or the other. The same with sexuality. Some people just shut down sexually completely, and other people sometimes go to promiscuity or become highly sexualized or hypersexual. And so it's this it because we were in one extreme. It's like when we get out, we tend to go to either one extreme and be extremely expressive, or we go to one extreme and become extremely repressed and
right.
shut down. It's really, really sad what they do to people.
And it was the like the 2-on-1 sort of like judicial committee set up,
Yeah.
and it wasn't a judicial committee per se, but it
It was an
felt that.
investigative kind of counseling session.
I mean, there's been times where I was always told that, you look too sexual, you're too outspoken, you have too many opinions. Um,
Oh yeah.
like,
As a sister, don't have opinions or thoughts.
yeah,
I mean, let's say honestly, as a brother either. But yes, it's certainly
I
looked a
mean,
certain way.
there was times when I was out in field service, and there was this one brother specifically who just, my very existence just irked him. And he was my same age. He wasn't older than me. We were both like about 24, 25, and we went on a study. And I think it was my study or something. Was it my Yeah, it was my study. And so because it was my study, I was like, all right, cool, I'm about to say the prayer. And so I
Nope.
said the prayer. And I didn't have a head covering. I didn't wait for him to do it. I didn't wait. I just said the prayer because I'm like, because my thinking was, you're not my dad. You're not my husband. So I can pray for myself. So like, I still had this sort of like rebellious streak that was in there. And he was so pissed. Um, oh my God, after we left that study and we were in the car with the other group, because a guy and a girl can't be in a car by
Right,
themselves.
right.
When we were in the car with the other people, he he just went off. Like, he just went off and he started reading scriptures. And at the time I was like, oh my goodness, like I did something wrong. I shouldn't have prayed, you know? So
That's what
there's
they
like
believe. Yeah.
yeah. So um I eventually left that congregation um for unrelated reasons, because it was just too far from my apartment at the time. It was like 30 minutes from my apartment, and there was a closer one that was like 5 minutes away. So I switched to the suburban congregation that was closer. And that's when everything started to go downhill for me. Um, I met a girl at the congregation and we became friends. Um, and she was definitely living a double life. Um, and then one day we were at like a meeting, like a Thursday meeting or whatever. And she's like, hey, I'm bored. Do you want to leave? And I'm like, in the middle of the meeting? Because I had never done such a thing, you know? She's like, I'm hungry. Do you want to go? And I'm like, okay. So it was summertime, so you couldn't really tell like if someone was leaving, like they could have been going to the bathroom or something. So we left and we went to the bar and we got some food and we got some drinks, and we would do this like once or twice a month, where we
Best
would just
meeting ever.
and we would just leave and we would just go to the bar. Um, it's like if they had like a special drink night, we would like make sure we got there like before the drink night, before the early bird like drink specials canceled, you know. And before that, I wasn't really a drinker at all. I didn't go out. I was never very like social in that way, where I was like out at clubs or like in big groups, because I do have anxiety. Um, so I tend to stay away from large groups of people, and in situations like that. Um, Plus, I have been so like beaten down by that time by my mom and the congregation, to feel like, why go to these places anyway? You're not pretty enough. You're not good enough. The only people that are there are going to like tempt you into, worshiping Satan out back or something
Hmm.
and doing an orgy. Like that's what I thought happened, at those places. And so when I started going out with her, I was like, oh wait, like that's not what's going on. Like people are just having a drink and being with their friends and trying to find someone to hook up with at the end of the night or something. So um she um she was also a pioneer, which she actually got me more into a double life than I thought it was at the time. Like I never did anything crazy. I just started drinking, which for me I considered a double life. Um, so we were out in field service, and this is the probably the turning point for me with Jehovah's Witnesses. I was out in field service and I ran across a woman who was an artist. And she said, I will have a Bible study with you, but we can only use the Bible. And that's the only way we can have a Bible study. So I was like, that's awesome. I haven't had a Bible study in ages. I would love to have a Bible study. So I'm on board. Well, then I had to start reading the Bible. And the worst thing a Jehovah's Witness can do is read the Bible.
Yes.
Like if you want a fast track way to leaving the Jehovah's Witness, just read the Bible.
Yep.
Like that'll get you out.
That's what was getting to my wife. Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And so like I would go see her and I would see her like once a week, but our like half an hour discussions would turn into like an hour or an hour and a half. And I couldn't prove my points using the Bible. And I couldn't back up what I was saying unless I had a publication. And I always felt pressure to have a publication with me. So I actually, when I would have someone come with me, so I actually had started going to see her just by myself, um, because the territory that I was in was big enough that you could have your own territory card. So you didn't necessarily have to work with a partner
Mm-hmm.
if you didn't want to. And so I would always take out her territory so that I could be in that area. And then nobody else would get a witness from the JWs, but then also I could go talk to her.
Right.
So that lasted for about a year or so. And I really started struggling um, with my beliefs. I started drinking a lot more, which was very different for me because I had up until the time I was about 26, 27, I did not drink. My my dad was an alcoholic. My uncles were alcoholics. It's just not something that I did. I had one drink when I turned 21 and it was gross and I never drank again after
Yep.
that. But when all this stuff started happening, like I started going out more. I started, doing shots and drinking beer and drinking mixed drinks and like all this stuff that I had never done before, and going to the liquor store and like buying alcohol. Like I can't drink tequila anymore
Mm-hmm.
because the smell of it makes me want to throw up because I drank so much of it at the time. So there was the circuit overseer came to that congregation, and I had been asking for a shepherding call. I don't know if they still call them that,
Yep.
but
As far as I know.
okay. Okay. So I have been asking for a shepherding call because I knew like things were not right. I was crying a lot. Um, I just things were just not right with me, and I couldn't figure out what the problem was. My friends were getting married. I thought maybe it's just maybe it's because I'm alone. Maybe I want a boyfriend. Like maybe I don't know what it was. And so the CO came to visit, and he was standing next to an elder. And I walked up to the elder while the CO was standing next to him, and I said, "When am I going to get that shepherding call you promised me?" Which apparently is a bad thing because it makes them look bad in front of the CO when your flock has to come to you and ask you for a shepherding call.
Yeah, I've had, yes, I know about this. You just
And
insulted their authority.
it's basically it's what
Yep.
happened. Yeah. So that shepherding call didn't go great. Um, so I did eventually have that shepherding call, and it was the brother that I had asked and another rando brother that I don't quite recall who he was. And it was at the Kingdom Hall. And I told him some of my concerns, and I was super honest. I didn't tell him anything about the drinking, but I just said I was super honest about like the problems that I was having. none of which were really, I couldn't put my finger on it. Like, I didn't know it was because I didn't believe what was going on. I didn't know that it was because of the cognitive dissonance. I just knew I didn't feel right. Um, and so during the shepherding call, they read a scripture. I think it's in Proverbs or something. It says like trust Jehovah like with all your heart or something. Or
And do not lean upon your own understanding.
yeah, I think it's that. I think that that's what it said. And so they read that scripture, and the brother is like, "Well, is this the issue?" I said, "Yeah, it's the issue." I said, "My problem is that I'm not doing any of this, and that's why I'm here. Like, I don't trust Jehovah. I am leaning on my own understanding, and I need some help." So I was very, very blunt with them about what my issues were, and I didn't get any help. Like, they read me a few more scriptures and then sort of sent me on my way.
Yeah,
Um,
they go into those meetings usually with like an article in mind or a
um,
few scriptures, and that's all they're prepared to do.
yeah,
This is not a dynamic conversation typically whereby they are going to roll with the punches and have a really good discussion. They're more there to preach to you. It's almost like a presentation out in the field ministry,
yeah,
and that's
exactly,
all there is to it.
exactly. And so, after that, I kind of just sort of continued on this like spiral. Um, I went out a lot. I was drinking a lot. I was like making out with random people. Um, just a bunch of ridiculous behavior. Really. Um, and then when I was like 29, 28, 29, I I met a guy on the internet of all things. Um, it was a music board, like for electronica and techno.
Hmm.
And so we were just chatting and different stuff. And so like we said, and he wasn't a witness, obviously. Um, and we just started chatting, kind of getting to know each other. And he's like, "Hey, well, why don't you come visit me? I live in Chicago." I'm like, "Well, okay, that sounds fun. Like, that's cool." Um, and so drove to Chicago, and he stood me up. He did not show up. So here I am in Chicago. I got this hotel because that's where I was staying. And I didn't want to go to this techno thing by myself. So I'm just like, well, I'll just walk around. And so there's this bar across the street. So I go to the bar across the street, and I'm just sort of just feeling really crappy about myself. And, I was mad that I'd wasted the money on like the hotel and the gas and stuff. And um, I met just some random dude at the bar and had a one night stand. And it was horrible. Not in like like nothing bad happened. Like it wasn't like assaulted or anything like that, but
Right.
also nothing good happened either. Like it was thankfully I don't know who he is because it was a very unsatisfying experience, um, to be honest. And so that kind of the whole drive back to my home, I was like, see, this is what happens. This is what happens when you leave Jehovah. Like this is what happens when you make friends with people who aren't witnesses and you feel like crap because I did. I felt like the bottom of someone's shoe, you know, and it because it wasn't what I thought it was going to be.
Sure.
And so, I get back to my congregation and immediately confess um, to what I had done, and I I got privately reproved because it was the first time that I had ever really done anything. Like I'd never been in trouble um, at all. Like I'd never committed any quotation mark serious sins
Right.
or anything like that. I just felt lost at the time. Um, so So I got through the private reproof, got my, privileges back and everything. And I had decided, so this is like 2007, I had decided, um, oh, I had started having a panic attacks. That's what happened. I started having panic attacks in 2007. And the first one I had, I was on the freeway coming home from work and I felt like I was going to die. Thought I was having a heart attack.
Yeah,
I called,
those are quite common inside the organization,
I called,
unfortunately.
yeah, I called my sister and she kind of talked me through it. And she's like, "You're okay, you're fine."
Yeah.
By this time, I had reconnected with my family. Um, and she's like, "No, you're fine." So I went to the doctor and, they started me on like different medications. Um, and I started going to therapy at the request of my doctor.
Mm-hmm.
So my therapist was this like, he was this Jewish guy who's like, he was a Jewish guy, but he was atheist, which to me was like the weirdest thing I'd ever heard of. Because they're like, the God's chosen people and all that. And so I talked to him. He was an amazing therapist, and he kind of got me to realize why the panic attacks were happening. And he didn't come out and say, "Oh, it's because of your religion,"
Mm-hmm.
or anything like that. He said it's because you're not being who you are. Like you're making everybody else happy, but you're not happy, and it's coming out in these panic attacks.
Yes, a lack
And
of authenticity. It is the cause and the root cause of a lot of mental and emotional issues.
well, and then I started to notice that my panic attacks and my anxiety attacks only happened when I went to the Kingdom Hall.
Mm-hmm.
And they only happened like I would be fine the whole day. And then if it was a meeting day, soon as I got in my car to drive to my meeting, I could feel anxiety attacks coming. And
Yep.
I could feel it happening. So there were times that I got to the Kingdom Hall and I just stayed in my car. I couldn't get out of my car because it was just too much.
I used to do the same thing. I literally turned around. My wife and I would get ready, drive all the way to the Kingdom Hall, get in the parking lot, realize I could not get out of the car, turn around, leave, and drive home. And every time I drove home, I felt like just this tremendous relief. It was amazing.
Yep,
Yep. The body knows
yep.
sometimes things that you can't admit to yourself.
And during all this time, I had my drinking had gotten under control quite a bit, but it was still more than I liked. Um, I wasn't drinking every day, um, but I had stopped drinking every day and kind of fell back to drinking just on meeting nights.
Boy, that should show you. There's your red flag right there.
So like the first thing I would do when I would leave, the meeting on a Thursday night is, stop at the liquor store and pick up some wine or, whatever. I wasn't really like the vodka like stuff. I had stopped drinking tequila at this point. So I would pick up like some wine or some rum or something and just have a drink to kind of calm me down after the meeting. Um, so I decided in 2007 because I had gotten laid off. I got laid off from my job in 2007. But I got what is it, severance?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
For like
severance.
I yeah, I got severance for like 6 months. And I decided that I was going to move to New Mexico because I love the desert, which I kind of talked to you about a little bit earlier. Is
Mm-hmm.
the desert to me has just always been a place where I felt happy and felt me and felt peaceful. So I decided when I got laid off that I was going to pay off some bills with my severance and that I was going to get a job and work for a year and then move to New Mexico. So I got another job and I met a guy and I didn't move to New Mexico. So he worked at my same company. Um, He wasn't a Jehovah's Witness. I didn't know at the time that he was actually studying because I didn't really talk about being a Jehovah's Witness at work. I wasn't one of those people who's like preachy. So it was a call center, and you didn't really have time too much to talk to people anyway. Um, so like I would see him at like lunch or like walking out to our cars, and we kind of started chatting. Um, and you know, he was funny, he was cute. He brought me tea. You know, when I was sick, he would like go down to the cafeteria and get me tea and stuff. And so he was just a really nice person. Um, so at this point, I was out with another friend of mine. We were looking for furniture because she had just bought a new place. And just out of the blue, like he texted me or something. It was just like, you know, hey, what are you doing? And I was like, well, I'm out here shopping with my friend, and, you know, we're thinking about getting something to eat. And he's like, well, why don't you get something to eat with me? I was like, well, why don't you ask? Because I'm just that kind of a sarcastic person. And he's like, okay, well, let's meet up at this place and I'll see you in like 2 hours. And I was like, oh my God, I have a date. But it was like, it was literally like my first date. Like I never dated. Like I hung out in groups with people, but I was never very talkative to guys because I was just shy, and I did have a lot of anxiety. So I didn't really talk to a lot of people. So this was the first person that I really like had a date with. So we went on a date. It was a fun date, but it was weird. We went and saw this movie called My Winnipeg. If you ever are in the mood for just a weird artsy movie, I would definitely suggest it.
Never heard of
So
it. Interesting.
it's a doozy. I would try to explain it, but any explanation is not going to do the it, like it's just not like it's not going to do it justice. And we saw it at Art House, so it's a super artsy film. Um, so you know, we went out and it was a fun time, but I kind of felt a little guilty because I was like, well, he's not a witness, and you know, I probably shouldn't go out with him. So um, some time went by, and he got promoted out of my department, and I was home drinking one night, and he's out. He texted me. He's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, I'm just at home or whatever." He's like, "Oh, we're out with friends, like drinking and celebrating my new promotion." And I was like, "Oh, you should come over." Now, I didn't have any intentions on doing anything sexual with him when I sent the text message, but clearly that was there, because why else would you invite someone over that late? You know, it's not like we're going to come over and we're going to read the Bible together, you know? So,
You would
I
if
mean, I
you were
wasn't
a good
having
Jehovah's Witness.
right. I wasn't going to be having a Bible study with him, you know? So, you know, he came over. Um, we had sex. It was a great night. I woke up and felt immediately guilty. Um, like I felt so horrible. Like, and then I felt horrible for him too, because it must have been just a horrible experience to like really like this person and have this really great experience together. And then she wakes up the next day, like crying, talking about how she's going to die in Armageddon. You know, like that
Yep.
couldn't have been, that couldn't have been a great experience for him. Um, but I again confessed immediately. Um, Cut off contact with him, changed my phone number even. It was absolutely ridiculous. Um, and had a judicial committee. And the judicial committee was just horrible. It sent me into a deep, deep depression. Um,
The
they,
experience of the Judicial Committee?
absolutely. It was horrible. Um, so the two brothers two of the three brothers that were on my judicial committee um, had also been at that shepherding call that I talked about earlier,
Right.
and they had known me because I had been going to this congregation for a couple of years, so they knew me. Um, and then there was a new brother who came from a Black congregation, and my experiences with city versus suburban or majority Black versus majority white congregations is
Mm-hmm.
that majority Black congregations tend to be a little more strict because I think they come from a lot of like that Baptist sort of background. And he was like that. Like he was very by the book. And he made the experience like horrific. I sat there and I had already kind of gone through these emotions of like, failing Jehovah yet again. Um, and so I decided to do this judicial committee not because necessarily I felt like I needed to do it for me, but because that was the direction from the organization
Mm-hmm.
to get back on God's good side. Is
Right.
like, you have to go through this. So I go into this meeting and it's these three brothers, and the two brothers that I had known before were I mean, they were fine. They they were asking like a lot of inappropriate questions, as we all know.
Oh yeah,
Um,
they know. They need to know all the details.
and so I'm like, oh yeah, I slept with him. And he's like, well, what do you mean you slept with him? Like, homie, you know exactly what I mean when I said I slept with him. Like, why do I have to explain, like break it down the biology of it? Like, you know what I meant. And so they're like, well, it was horrible. They're like, oh, did you orgasm? Did you do this? Did you kiss? Like, it just a lot of just super inappropriate questions to the point where I had actually started getting really mad. And the new brother, the super strict brother that had come from this other congregation, got mad at me. And he's like, you don't seem repentant, and I don't see you crying. And like, he just kind of like read me a riot act. And we literally got into an argument in my judicial committee because I'm like, I looked at him, I was like, how dare you tell me if I'm repentant or not? I told him, whatever is going on is between me and Jesus. I'm only here because the Bible says I have to be here. And so he was just,
Wait, didn't you? Weren't you the one who confessed? I
yeah,
mean, like,
exactly
shouldn't that show something? You could have hidden this. You went to them. You clearly it was weighing on you.
right. But, I wasn't crying enough.
Right.
So I left the room and I heard arguing, like loud arguing. Thankfully, we were the only people still there because it was late, but I heard them arguing because I was sitting outside the door. And it felt so humiliating and just it was probably one of the lowest times of my life. Um, so they called me back in, and um, the vote was 2-1 to publicly reprove me. So the two brothers that I had known prior voted to publicly reprove me, and then the other brother voted to disfellowship me, which
Yep.
was not, I wasn't surprised. Um, so that happened. I was in this really bad depression, and the guy, he like he kept reaching out to me. He's like, are you okay? Like talk to me, like tell me what's going on. And so eventually I started talking back to him again because I was going through this really bad period that I couldn't really talk to anybody about because people did have this view of me that I had never gotten in trouble and that I was a pioneer and I gave really good comments and I was at every meeting. So they did have this sort of like view of me that I would never leave, you know?
Right.
And so I started talking to this guy again, and sort of like one thing leads to another. And then, and I bought a house, and then we got married in 2011.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It took a leap there. um, Getting married was another kind of thing that really opened my eyes about Jehovah's Witnesses. So, and the rumor mill.
Well, yeah. I mean, you didn't marry one of Jehovah's Witnesses, so
Well,
you married a
actually,
quote worldly person, right?
he had actually gotten baptized by this time. I'm sorry, I didn't bring that out.
Oh, so he
But he,
started studying and got baptized.
right, because he was studying actually before I met him, and
Really?
I didn't. And so when we were dating, he had told me, he finally came out and told me that he was studying, and he told me like before, like the week or two before he got baptized, because he said he didn't want us to date if it was just like because he was studying.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so he actually got baptized like a year before we got married. Um, so we got married, and I asked my older brother, who I mean, I had like some contact with him, but not like a whole lot. But he was still my brother, and I figured like he might want to marry his sister, you know. Um, and that's when I learned about the rumor mill again. That I asked him if he could marry me and my husband, and he refused and said that I did not have a clean courtship, and
Mm-hmm.
that he couldn't do it because I didn't have a clean courtship. And I was so devastated because I was like, what does that have to do with anything? You're my brother,
Yeah.
little. But my brain sort of hadn't accepted the the nonsense that is Jehovah's Witnesses at the time. So we ended up getting married. Um, I I had a great time at my wedding. We had our wedding at my house that we had just bought. It was small, it was fun, we had a great time. Um, the congregation that we went to was another thing that just pushed me out. They were very mean to me, because they saw it as I came in and snatched up this new brother. Like I was just waiting in the wings for him to get baptized.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when he wasn't there, no one would speak to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when I had a talk, and I had on some like strappy sandals and a summer dress, but it was like modest. It was like it had wide shoulders and it was long enough. And they came up to him and talked to him in the back room, and they were like, well, they asked him if he thought it was okay what I was wearing. And he's like, yeah, I think she looks great. He's like, I think she looks fine. And he's like, they told him that he needed to get me under control because what I was wearing was inappropriate. And he like went off on them and told them that, you know what, he told them, I'm not her dad. If you have a problem with her, you can walk up to her and talk to her about it. I
Yes.
like what she's wearing. So he was always, despite like, because we're divorced now, but despite everything that happened between us, he always stuck up for me as an individual.
Mm-hmm.
He gave me a really safe place to question my beliefs more deeply than I had in the past. So for that, like I'll always thank him for that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we had we had a party. We had a card party. And so we had set up, me and him, in our house. So we had set up, because he liked doing things for the congregation and the kids and stuff. And so we set up a party at our house. Like we moved all the furniture out, like everything. We made tacos, like we had like a whole smorgasbord of like toppings and everything, like a taco buffet. And we invited our book study group over, and no one came. Not a single person came.
Mm-hmm.
I found out later that the brother that studied with him, they did not come because we did not invite his them to our wedding. Um,
Wait, they didn't. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, witnesses get. I don't. I've not. I guess been a part of too many weddings in the quote world since leaving, but J Dubs gets super petty
yeah,
over who gets invited and
yes.
just where people sit and just all these ridiculous things. Um,
Like the United Nations or something. And I'm like, you people need to calm down. My wedding was at my home. It literally was 35 people, which, as you know, my family is huge. So
yeah,
most of those people were my whole family couldn't even come to my wedding. So, she constantly like made these little snide comments to me. Um, when we were engaged, my husband had a part on the circuit assembly, yeah, circuit assembly.
hmm
Um, and when they found out we were engaged, they told him he couldn't do it because he was a bad example. I was out in field service one time, and there I ran across a random brother who just happened to live in the neighborhood but went to a different congregation. And I had never met this guy before, never seen him. And so people were talking to him, and I went up and I introduced myself. I said, hey, my name is LaShanda. I'm married to such and such. It's nice to meet you. And he did not shake my hand. And he looked at me and he's like, oh, yeah, I know who you are. And went back to what he was doing.
man, there is no forgiveness there. There's like the rumor mill, the gossip, the backbiting. Um, like they all insert themselves like in between your relationship with anyone or whatever. Like they take it personal as though somehow it has anything in the world to do with them. They're so narcissistic and self-absorbed. It's really sad.
So, so, um, so like around 2013, a friend of mine I had made when I was in my 20s. She was actually my best friend. Um, we were, she was another roommate that I had. We just had a really good time together. She um, had gotten a job and they were sending her to New Orleans for a conference, like a work conference. And she didn't want to go by herself. So she said, hey, do you want to come with me? And I said, yeah, sure, I'll come. And this was about the time when the website flipped from JW.com. I think it was JW.com,
Yeah,
and it changed to JW.org.
I
I
think
think
so. I
it's
think
either
you're
like
right. It was something like that.
they had just launched JW.com, because there was a lot of people who, I remember parts on the meeting that they were saying like, make sure it's the right web page so that
Right.
you don't go to like apostate sites. So it must have been just when they were starting JW.com. And so I put in JW.com, and it took me to Jehovah's Witnesses.net, which is a completely different website than JW.com. It's a message board.
I know because I'm a member.
Yeah, that's where it took me. Um, so I started reading JW.net, and I started reading Blondie's Watchtower comments,
Yep.
which were played a huge part in my waking up.
Oh, that's
Is her is
awesome. That Blondie
Yeah,
did those until I think just in like the last few months. I think
yeah,
she's been doing those for years.
yeah. Those her breakdown, like the paragraph by paragraph breakdown that she had of the Watchtower articles,
hmm
was just gold for me. Um, because it it was logical. Like a lot of stuff on JW.net, like there's a lot of bitterness, which I understand.
Sure.
And it's completely acceptable because that's their experience. But it can turn some people off because I was already in this really kind of like people hate me phase because of the congregation I was in,
Mm-hmm.
that's not something I could deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but Blondie's comments were very logical, they were very thought out. There were references. Um, it was amazing. So when I went on this trip with my best friend, I asked her, I was like, have you seen this website? Like, it's called jw.net. I was like, have you seen this? And she's like, no, like, I haven't seen it. And she, I talked to her a little bit about it and she asked me like what I thought about it. And I said, well, there's some bitterness on it, but I think based on their experiences, it's probably, well founded. Um, and that was sort of like what the circle the it started to happen. Once I found that website, everything else just sort of fell into place. I came across JW Struggle
Mm-hmm.
and his judicial committee, um, and that was huge. um, I came across um, it's called Berean Pickets.
Yep.
I don't know if it's still up, but there was a article that someone had wrote, and it was very pointed toward the convention, because I think at the convention they were like, you don't need to study all these other things like Hebrew or Greek or all these other books and stuff because we've done it for you.
Yep.
And when I heard that at the convention, I was like, well, I don't think so, sir. Like you're not, no,
In
that's
other
not how
words,
this works.
don't fact check us. Don't look at
Yeah,
anything we're doing.
exactly. And then so I when I saw that article that specifically addressed what had bothered me, I was like, wow, that's something, because that website as well, there's their articles were very well thought out. They
Mm-hmm.
were very factual. They had references that you could look up, like real references, you could look up, and it wasn't the bitterness that unfortunately a lot of XJWs have because of their experiences. And so I was able to take in the information, and accept it for what it was, because it didn't have all the emotion tied to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I came across the John Cedars channel. He had the Getting to Know You series
Mm-hmm.
where he did like the shoot, what do they call it? The governing body. Um, and then all of this happened in like the space of a year. Like it just all kind of came out at me in the space of a year. And thankfully, because of my husband, who also was like, some stuff is not right here. He was kind of on board with me looking at all of this stuff, because he had came in as an adult. Like he was in his mid 40s when he came into the organization. So he had this past of, being able to think for himself and seeing through, quite frankly, the bullshit. And so he was just like, you know what, search what you got to search, find what you have to find, and that's fine. So in 2013, my mother-in-law, his mom, died very, very suddenly. She was older. She was in her 80s, but she died very suddenly, like 3 months, between the time we even knew she was sick and the time she passed.
Mm-hmm.
And that destroyed our relationship, my husband and I's relationship, because, and I'm not going to get into too much about his issues, but um, a lot of this trauma that he had been holding in came out, when his mom passed. Um, he does have PTSD. He has a complex PTSD, and severe anxiety and social issues and OCD. He has a plethora of mental health issues that came out when his mom passed.
That happens a lot. That's a shame.
Yeah, and it just destroyed our marriage. It turned him into a completely different person than the person that I had married. He became very angry. He became very verbally abusive, um, and um, he he ended up having heart surgery. He had 3 heart surgeries, so it was a very like stressful time. So like his mom passed, he had to deal with that, and so his mom passed in 2013. He had to deal with that. 2014, we found out that he was having heart problems, and in 2015, between January and April, he had 3 heart surgeries. And the issue was corrected, but it's a lot. It's a lot for a person to go through. Um, and then he, I, what was you had a episode, and I think his name was Silvers.
Yep. Silvers.
Yeah, I did not have an understanding of what complex PTSD was. Like I read about it, but I didn't have a real grasp of what it does to a person until I listened to that episode. Um, it brought a lot of things into focus and helped me to understand what my husband was going through. So it helped me to be a little more understanding um, of his situation.
Shout out to Silvers. You know, it's what
Yeah,
happens when you're open and honest about stuff. Helps
yeah.
other people
He
to
was
see what's going on too sometimes.
that episode was just a really it was really important in helping me understand what my husband was going through at the time. So then in 2016, I think, no, 2017, 2017, he started having panic attacks. Like he would have like 10 to 15 panic attacks a day. So I finally got him in to see someone, and then on my birthday, so like 2017 on my birthday, he got into a car accident, and he ran his car into a building. He had on flip flops or something, and the flip flop got caught, I guess, and he ran his car into a building.
Ooh.
And yeah, it totaled the car. He was fine. He had some like damage, some pain from the airbag, but he was otherwise fine. Um, then he told me a couple days later that he had done it on purpose. And then our life really went down the tubes. Um, I found a therapist for him. I I almost lost my job because he couldn't drive. So I had to drive him to his therapy appointments every day. He was going to therapy every like 5 days a week. And it was just a lot. It was a lot. So in 2018, I think 2020, I was going through a lot. I can't remember. Everything
Yeah,
kind of
I'm
like
sure it kind of runs together at a point. I
kind of
mean,
run together in the last 3 years. But
yeah.
I had I was still at the same job that I had been at when I met him. I had been in a different position, and a girl started at my new position the same day I did. And I always joke with her because I tell her like I'm so happy that that it was you that started here, because I was so afraid I was going to be working with somebody who was going to be really bitchy. And she was like, "Oh my god, so was I. I'm so happy you're not a bitch."
Low expectations.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, so we kind of started a friendship. Um, and she's just a really really awesome person, and really got me through a lot in more ways than I think she really even understands. Try not to get emotional when I think about it. Um, I didn't really have anyone to talk to because, Jehovah's Witnesses, they don't want to, you have to be perfect.
Yeah, they don't want to
You
hear your
can't.
troubles.
Exactly. Exactly. They ask you, oh, they say, oh, we missed you at the meeting, but you don't get that phone call, you know?
Oh yeah, they'll only
Um,
talk to you if you're at the meeting. Then they'll say, "We miss you," but if you're not at the Kingdom Hall, they'll never take the actual effort to reach out to you.
exactly. And actually, my last meeting was in 2014. Um, so before this all happened, our last meeting was in 2014 before the memorial.
Mm-hmm.
There was a Watchtower article, and I they read a scripture, and the scripture was just like blatantly wrong the way they interpreted it. And I was like, I'm done with this. And my husband was like, yeah, I've been done. So he was ready to go because um, when his mom passed away, we told we told the brothers in the congregation, if they could like make an announcement that his mom had passed away and when the funeral was going to be. And they said no because she wasn't a Jehovah's Witness.
Mm-hmm.
And about a week or so later, someone else in the congregation's father or grandfather passed away, who also was not a Jehovah's Witness, but they announced it from the platform and they posted his funeral service information on the board.
That tells you where you
So,
stand, doesn't it?
exactly. And when that happened, my husband was done. He kept going for a little bit for me, like to support me because I hadn't gotten to the point where I was done with them. But at that point he was done with them for life at that point. So when I finally told him that I was done going, he's like, that's cool. We have time to do stuff now. We don't have to, because we were faking our service time. Like it was ridiculous. It was, both of us would look at each other in the morning and be like, are we going? Yeah, I guess we're going. Like that's kind of how it had turned out. So anyway, so I met this girl at my job, and I had been going through so much stuff, and my younger brother had cut off contact with me because of what I had watched the Royal Commission, um, and I was a little maybe over exuberant in talking to him about it because he does have two little girls, and I was
Mm-hmm.
maybe a little more forceful than I should have been. Um, but he cut off contact with me in 2015. Yeah, 2015ish. So I haven't seen him in 5 years. Um, he has two little girls. I haven't seen them either in 5 years. They're like almost 10 now, like 8 and 10.
Yeah.
Um, my older brother has a little girl. She's not little anymore. She's probably like 15 now. Haven't seen her in about 7 years. Um, we used to, so the congregation I was in had five congregations in it.
Oh wow.
And yeah, so they went to the one across my older brother and his wife and his little girl went to the congregation across from us. Like it was the same time, it was just a different congregation. And she would come over after the meeting and like give me a hug and we would chit chat and everything. And the last time I saw her, they were switching congregations to a different meeting time. She came over to me and gave me a big hug and she looked really sad. And I said, hey, what's the problem? She's like, we're switching congregations. I said, don't worry, like I'll see you, like it's fine. And she was like, no, I'll never see you again. And that was the last time I actually saw her.
Mm.
So like, even though I'm not disfellowshipped, I'm not dissociated, um, I don't have anyone left from that JW life in mind.
Yeah, because
Um,
you don't have to be officially out for them to shun you.
yeah,
Shunning, it's interesting, when a lot of times when people study with Jehovah's Witnesses later in life and they already, they have their family,
yeah,
from day one, you tell people, hey, if you're going to study and learn about Jehovah, your family's probably going to try to stop you. So you probably ought to isolate from them because, they're going to be agents of Satan trying to, keep you from coming to the meetings and doing what's right. And then, of course, the family sees that you're joining a cult and they're like,
Yeah.
hey, this is weird. You're kind of acting strange now and you don't want to be around us anymore. And then, the person's like, oh, well, that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Of course,
Yeah.
my family doesn't want to be around me anymore, so I better cut them off. And, my family's trying to warn me, and I was told this would happen. So, boom, you're already shunning your worldly family as you're studying. And then it just gets worse from there. We're taught from day one to shun other people, to shun our own emotions, our own feelings about things. And then, it's no wonder shunning is in Jehovah's Witnesses' blood at every turn. So the second
Absolutely.
you don't conform, you're out. I mean, bad
Yeah.
association spoils useful habits, right?
And then the thing is, it's not just that part of it that's horrible, because now you've been cut off from the people in your life, but now your family, because you couldn't associate with them
Yep.
because they weren't witnesses, now you don't have that support that you normally would have.
Yep.
So
Cut you
it's
off from everybody.
exactly, so you're just sitting out here twisting it in the wind, and sometimes those bad things that they talk about do happen because you don't have support. So
Well,
I
also
was
because you don't have any healthy tools or anything, they've never taught anybody anything. So, yeah,
exactly.
it's gonna result a lot of times in really bad things happening.
Yeah. So I did end up going to college. I graduated in 2018. I have a
Congrats.
bachelor's. Thank you. I have a bachelor's in public administration. I worked really, really hard for it. So during all of this time when my husband was sick and going through all of this, I was still going to school.
Hmm.
Um, so when I started in the position that I have now at my job, like I said, I met this girl, and we hit it off immediately. And one day I had it was just a really bad day. Um, and I was sitting at my desk because she sits right in front of me, and I was on the verge of tears. Like a fly could have come past me and I would have cried about it. Like it was horrible. And she just popped up, because I always make fun of her because she's short. So she just kind of popped up, and I saw her head, and she was like, "Hey, what's going on?" And it just all came out. And I just told her, I said, "My life is falling apart." And she listened, and try not to get emotional, but she listened, which no one had actually done. Like even my friends, and my family, like they knew that I was going through all of this um, with my husband, but no one cared enough to listen and let me talk about it. And here, this, you know, stranger, if you will, this coworker, took the time to care, and it made such a huge difference in my life. So she's an amazing, amazing person, and like I love her so much. Uh,
Uh,
sorry.
no, never apologize for having feelings. That's beautiful. What a what a great example of actually loving and caring for someone, being there for them when things are difficult. Jehovah's Witnesses, they shoot their wounded when things get uglier, when someone has a problem. They don't want anything to do with you anymore. And this person just being a genuine, sincere friend,
Yeah.
listening to you. That's a beautiful thing. And just also, I mean, like, doesn't it just show for so many of us, all it takes is someone to listen, to see you,
Yeah.
to feel you, to validate you, to let you know you're not alone, not crazy. Jehovah's Witnesses are the opposite of that. They want you to feel alone and crazy. They have no desire to see you or validate you. you end up feeling very alone and like no one really cares. And it's just the dichotomy there, the contrast is very apparent.
And like I've been so lucky to have these people come into my life either for a short time or a long time, and they've been exactly what I've needed. So when I was going through this time with my ex-husband, I was feeling so horrible about, just who I was as a person. I was unlovable, um, that no one really cared. Um, I was really just beaten down, by him, not on purpose, but because of the stuff that he was dealing with and didn't know how to deal with. Um, and so I was the easy target. Um, that I did end up cheating on him, but even that, like, while I regret that it hurt him, I 100% um am happy that that person came into my life at the time they did, because, and it sounds so weird to say, but he kind of showed me what a healthy relationship should look like. That, I know it sounds weird to say
I
that.
understand what you're saying.
But he really did, because if I got angry, he's like, why are you yelling? Like, just tell me what the problem is and we can talk about it and we'll figure it out. And I was like, wait, I don't have to hide what I'm thinking. And so he gave me a place to figure out who I was. And because it was an affair, he wasn't, we weren't trying to spend forever together. You
Yeah.
know, we weren't trying to build a life together or anything like that. So the expectations being low were really, as far as like what I was expected to give in that relationship, helped me figure out what I need in a relationship. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, so my husband found out about it, as most happens with most affairs. Um, and that just made a bad situation worse. He got more controlling, than he was. He got more verbally abusive, um, got more threatening. Um, and so I guess it all kind of culminates in last year, 2019. Um, I had a breakdown, like a mental health breakdown in 2019. And I was off work for almost 8 months. Um, I, if I didn't go off work and get treatment, I, I don't know what would have happened. I was at the lowest I had ever been, because now not only was this person who I had let into my life gone, you know, um, the treatment that I was getting from my husband was now that much worse. Um, he shared my journals with all of his friends. So he took my electronic journals and shared them.
Your husband?
Yes.
Ex, I guess, but yeah.
Yeah. But at the time, yeah, he took my journals from my computer and emailed them to all of our friends, um, which was humiliating.
Yeah,
Um,
that's quite a violation.
yeah. Um, it was really, really tough. I'm not going to say I didn't bring some of it on myself, but I also never talked about what was going on in our household and what was going on with him to anybody. So I felt like even if I did cheat on him, that I like keep it in the house, you know?
I understand what
So,
you're saying.
but whatever, you get what you, may you get what do they say? May you get what you want, but never what you deserve. So, so, um, I cut off contact with the affair partner and hadn't talked to him in probably like a year at this point. So 2019, um, he had the affair partner had reached out to me, and said, hey, how are you? Like, just checking in to say hi. It wasn't really like a rekindling of anything. It was more just a friendly hi, how are you? Um, and I responded back. I said, hey, I'm good, just working on this stuff and blah blah blah. Um, and then again, my husband at the time, he went into my email because that's what he would do. He cracked every password I ever had and went into my email, read all my emails, and put a picture of this person on Facebook and said, "This is the person my wife is having an affair with." And I hadn't talked to this person in like a year and a half. And it was my tipping point. It was I was so angry and I was so fed up with everything that had happened. Um, I snatched his phone from him to delete the Facebook post, and I pushed him, and we have like exposed brick in our house. So when I pushed him, his head hit the brick and he got like a little cut, and he called the police. So I went to jail overnight.
Hmm.
And it was probably the lowest part of my life. And I also hate subway tile now. Like, I'll never have subway tile in my house because of that.
I can
Um,
imagine.
it was like I couldn't call anybody to come get me because when you have a domestic violence charge, it's like they don't let you contact anybody because of like retribution. Like, they don't want anybody going after the other party.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I'm like, okay. So the next day I get out. Um, I thought for sure I'm definitely going to lose my job now. Because I was supposed to go back to work that day when this happened. So I called my short term disability person, and she just told her what happened. And she's like, you know what? Take a leave of absence for 30 days, get your stuff together, don't quit. You can do this. So she became like this person that walked me through the system.
Hmm.
So that's like another person that's like just dropped into my life where she could have been like, well, I mean, SOL for you, she could have just wrote me off.
Yeah.
But she took that extra step with something she didn't have to do to help me. So I went and filed for divorce that day, like that Tuesday that I got out. Um, and went over to my mom's house where I am now and lasted less than a week. I couldn't take it. Um, she started in on me almost immediately with the "it's my house, it's my rules. No, you stop," because I had started drinking again
Hmm.
to deal with everything. And she's like, "No, you can't drink." And um, she said, "You're not special, you're not the only person that this has happened to, you need to pull yourself together." Like, it's this is the same this is the same woman who divorced my father and was like, "Okay, well, you need to figure out how to make it work." Like, lady, you didn't figure out how to make it work, so how are you now going to tell me I need to figure out how to make it work?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so here comes sort of the universe in its infinite wisdom. um uh, Another friend from work that I had only had passing conversations with. Um, I just everything just came out. I said, I this happened, and she kind of knew a little bit about what was going on because one time when I went out with her, my husband texted me probably 40 times and asked for selfies of us so he could so I had to like
Yikes.
prove that I was where I was. And this is before he found out I was cheating on him. So she kind of knew like what was going on.
Right.
So I told her kind of what was happening, and she's like, you know what? I'm gonna make a key for you to my place and come stay with me. And I did. I stayed with her for a month, and she didn't have to do it. Um, but again, like, these amazing, amazing people, have come into my life when I needed them, when I really have had no one else. And have just been really just accepting and non-judgmental and just really amazing people. Because like when I did first go over my mom's house, while I was there, like 2 days later, my brother showed up, um, because he was meeting some friends in the city, and he wouldn't even come in the house. He knew what had happened. He would not even come in the house to ask me how I was doing, if I was okay. He sat outside in his car,
Mm.
and my mom came in and said, "Hey, can you get a Tylenol and some water? You know, your brother has a headache." So you want me to get something for him, and he can't even come in and ask his own sister
Yeah,
how
screw
he's
that.
doing? I looked at her, I was like, "Absolutely not." Well, I said something else, but she's like, "Don't curse in my house." You know, so it's like in situation after situation where like family has an opportunity to step up and be a human being, they choose to be a Jehovah's Witness instead. And so this girl, the who I lived with for a month, like she was amazing. She went to work, she did her thing. She never bothered me. If I slept all day, I slept all day. Like, I she didn't harass me to be social.
No
She didn't.
judgment.
Right. She just accepted that that's where I was at the time, and that if I needed to sleep 20 hours, then damn it, that was fine. Sleep 20 hours, you know, and that's okay. If I need, we watched trashy court TV together, like Divorce Court and Paternity Court and all those horrible shows together, and she allowed me to say what I had to say without judging it.
Yeah.
And just letting it be. And it was something that I hadn't had before. So she's just been a really, really amazing, amazing person. I'm so happy that she's in my life, um, right now and for the rest of it. Um, Same thing with my coworker. Like, I love her to death. She's an amazing person. Um, I met I have guy friends now, which I never had
That's
before.
not possible. I didn't know that could happen. That's what Jehovah's Witnesses said.
But the crazy thing is, like, when I first met them, I'm like, well, I guess we're dating now. And my one guy friend was like, no, we're not. Like, we're literally just getting beer and we're hanging out. Like, this isn't a date. Like, I like you, but I'm not interested in you like that. And I was like, oh, so we're just friends. And he's like, yeah, we're just friends. I was like, oh, okay. So this is what friends do. Friends go out. they, they go out and have beers. And now when we go out, I'm like, hey, like, do you think that girl is cute? Do you want me to talk to her for you? Like, I'm such like the wing woman. I love trying to get him like a girlfriend. So it's like, and he has a girlfriend now, which I 100% will take credit for. Um, Even though I probably didn't have that much to do with it, but I'm still taking credit for it. But so now I have I'm getting this diverse group of friends that are teaching me how to be a person. Because when you're a Jehovah's Witness, you're not taught how to be a person. You're not taught how to interact with people or how to have friends, because you're already friends by default because you're both witnesses,
Yep.
and that's a really crappy way to have friends. Um, so I'm just right now, um, my divorce got finalized a monthish ago. Um,
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm I'm very happy. We get along a lot better now. Um, we have dogs, so we don't have kids. We have dogs, so we get along for their sake. Um, and we're selling the house, so that's kind of in the works right now. Um, and I'm doing great at my job. I have a lot more energy. I have a lot more focus. Um, have a lot more drive and ambition. Like all of that energy that was focused on just getting through the day when I was with him is now focused on me. I can use that energy for something for myself. Um, I go to therapy once a week. I love my therapist. He's an amazing, amazing person.
Awesome.
Who I've been seeing him for about 5 years. When I first stopped going to the Kingdom Hall, I would have massive anxiety when I saw Jehovah's Witnesses like on the street, like doing their preaching. And he's helped me get through that. So now I can see Jehovah's Witnesses and not have an anxiety attack,
Hmm.
um, which is huge. He's helping me through um, the divorce and all of the emotions and that you go through when you're dealing with someone who has severe mental health problems and is an alcoholic. So he's helping me a lot through that. My drinking has gone down tremendously. Um, I might have a glass of wine, one glass of wine, like a week. Um, and even that at some points has gotten to be too much.
Good for you.
Um, so I'm just focusing right now on like trying to be healthy
Yep.
and take care of myself. I had a surgery that I have been looking forward to since I was probably in my God, since I started having like cycles as a woman when I hit puberty.
Hmm.
I've had the worst cycles and worst pain um with my monthly cycles since I was probably 13. Where to be like I was throwing up, I couldn't eat, I couldn't hold down food. I was on massive amounts of painkillers. Um for since I was 13, I'm 43 now, so for about 30 years. Um and so I had a hysterectomy the beginning of August, and my friends know I talk about everything. So I talk about being a Jehovah's Witness. I talk about my anxiety. I talk about the need to go to therapy and to have medication. I talk about my hysterectomy, and I'm like, you guys are about to learn some stuff about reproduction. like, like once I figure something out, like everybody is gonna learn it. Like I'm a much more political person now. I'm more educated about politics now. So even though I live with my mom, I'm like, no, we're gonna talk about this. Like we're gonna have this discussion. And my friend, the one that let me live with her, she just cracks up sometimes because she's like, you and your mom, like, can you give that poor woman a break? Like she can't take this much knowledge at the same time. You know? Because like last night, for example, we were watching CNN and she's like, I was saying how I'm gonna go vote because there's like some I vote for everything now. Like I vote in every election, like religiously, I guess. Um, but with her, I said, there's some school stuff that's on the ballot and some public like road stuff that I'm gonna vote for. And she says, well, I don't want to hear about your voting. I was like, well, there's nothing worldly about school funding and road projects. So you can probably vote for that. I said, it's also a conscience issue. And she's like, well, that's part of the world and you shouldn't take sides. I said, you take sides. She's like, no, I don't. I was like, do you want Trump elected? And she was like, well, no, he's horrible. I said, you're taking a side. Like, do you not see that? So we have these sort of conversations where, I'm sure she's tired of it, but because she's my mother and she's trying to be supportive, she's still letting me live here. So I'm not as bad as I used to be with it. Um, but I've also learned how to set boundaries with her because she does have a Zoom call with my brother and his kids. Um, and she actually hides the fact that I live here, so they don't know that I live here. Um, so one week I saw her talking to them, and I just went outside because I was like, I'm tired of this crap. Like this is some nonsense. So I went outside, and she turned her phone away. Um, and then I was angry and whatever, so I just came back inside. And after her phone call, she said, "Oh, your brother's kid is getting braces and blah blah blah." And I just looked at her and I said, "You know what? I don't care." And she was like so shocked. I said, I don't care. why would I care about people who don't care about me? Not enough to ask me how I'm doing when I'm going through these horrible, horrible things. And she said, well, we don't even talk about you, so it shouldn't be that much of an issue. Like, it shouldn't bother you so much. So there's like these things that happen where sometimes I think there's hope for her, but then I'm like, well, maybe not, because she needs to be where she is, because she knows if she decides to leave the Jehovah's Witnesses or if she questions it, number one, my brother will cut her off so she won't see her grandkids. And it gives her a sense of hope and stability, which she needs. And I don't want to take that away from somebody.
In the end, it's her life, it's her beliefs. She's got to be the one to choose. So,
Exactly.
yeah, this
I
goes
just
back to
try
those
and,
boundaries.
yeah, and I just try and, like I said, just kind of love her where she's at, and what she's able to give, instead of being angry that she's not able to give more.
Right.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you got it. You can't get mad at the fish because it can't fly. It doesn't have
Exactly.
wings, or the bird because it can't swim. I mean, it. People are who they are, and sometimes you have to love them for who they are, and let go, and just you know, um, if they're super toxic for you, that doesn't mean you have to
Yeah.
hang out. But yeah, it. Your mom is who she is, and she's probably doing the best she can right now,
Exactly. And that's trying
just
what
like you.
that's yeah, that's what I try and focus on, is that she's doing what she can. And I know that me staying here is a big deal
Yeah,
for her.
that's a
And the
big
fact
deal.
that, she doesn't hassle me about her excuse me, she doesn't hassle me about coming in and listening to her Zoom meetings for any of that, or the convention, or she doesn't try and read scriptures to me or anything like that. So it is a big deal that she's letting me stay here. So
Absolutely, for a witness.
yeah, and so I do try and respect that until it gets to a point where I'm like, all right, lady, you got to pull it back a little bit here. But yeah, the whole,
So what do you want then going forward? I mean, this is where you are today after, living this life. You've gone to college, you're doing things. It's like you can see that you're kind of setting maybe a new foundation up. Where do you want to go from here? What do you enjoy about your new life, and where do you want to go?
I'm excited to learn what I like. Um,
Hmm.
my therapist always gets on me because he says you have no hobbies. So
That's
I'm
typical.
yeah, so I'm trying to learn what it is that I like, really, because I had the JWs first, and then I had my husband, who we were very much into his hobbies. He raced sailboats as a hobby, so it takes a lot of time.
Hmm.
Um, so just learning, I guess, what it is that I like to do.
Do you know how to figure that out?
I'm I'm trying a little bit of everything.
That's it. That's it. It's like, how do
Yeah,
you know what kind of food you like? You try
yeah,
Indian food and something from like Liberian food and Japanese food. Like you try all these different cuisines, and you find out what you like and what you don't. And it's the same thing
yeah,
with anything else in life. You just have to try new things, and experiment and see what fits you.
yeah. I'm definitely on that road. Like, I have my dogs whom I love, and we've gone hiking. I love being outdoors.
Yeah.
I'm not an outdoorsy person per se, but I like to be outside,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm
Sure.
You're not going to find me digging a garden or any of that stuff, but I'll go hiking and I'll go rock climbing and I'll do stuff like that. But then I want to go back to the hotel. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not not
Yeah,
going
you
to
don't have
sleep
to
on
be
the ground.
Bear Grylls or something. you can
Exactly.
you can just enjoy it for what you enjoy. Just leave it at that. You don't have to go any farther than that.
I'm getting back into music. That's something that I had lost for a long, long time.
Hmm.
I don't play any instruments, but I love music. I have a huge collection of music that I haven't listened to in probably 10 or 15 years. So I'm kind of getting back into that and to different artists. And um, I try my one of my nieces that I do talk to. She's an artist. She's an amazing, amazing artist. And so I do try and support her art as much as possible, um, and make sure that she can pursue the dreams that she has for herself. So I'm just really trying to focus on being, I guess, a good friend, a good auntie, um, a good a good person, like not
Mhm.
because of my religion or lack of religion, because I'm an atheist now, but um, just because you can be a good person. Like there's no one is hurt by it. No one is hurt by you encouraging someone in something that they love, because so many times as a Jehovah's Witness, especially as a child, they take away your dreams.
Yep.
Not just what you want to do, but the ability to dream and have those crazy ideas that you have as a kid, where one day you want to be a marine biologist and the next day you want to climb mountains. Like they take that away from you. And so I'm really trying to focus on getting that part of me back, um, and figuring out who Shonda is, or who she was, and what I can bring back and what I can hold on to, really.
Well, that's
So
beautiful. That's beautiful. So you've got the whole, for lack of a better term, world. You know, how can Jehovah's Witnesses can mess up anything, even the word world. You
right,
know, but you've got the whole world at your fingertips. You know, I mean, like there's so many things now that we can get involved in, and do dare to dream. There's nothing wrong with having dreams. Um, it's hard to figure out what those should be at a time because we've been deadened so much to who we actually are. We were never allowed to, like, as Jehovah's Witnesses, you kind of attach outwardly to external things like labels, like I'm one of Jehovah's Witnesses, or
exactly.
sometimes people attach to their careers and things like that. But there's just so many things that you can learn to attach to, and then honestly, to actually learn to love yourself
Yeah,
is a big one because a lot of people struggle to be alone because we weren't taught how to enjoy being by ourselves at all. We always had to
exactly.
have well, you had family around all the time, but with this huge family you have, but whether it's family or we were at the meetings around people or whatever, you just weren't really allowed to explore who you are and what you like as an individual. And the beautiful thing is now you get to do that. So that's awesome.
Exactly. And like I'm looking forward to, like I said, just a lot of things. Like I'm looking for my own house now, which is just like, whoo,
Yeah.
that's just like, whoa, okay. But I'm really looking forward to it, and making my own decisions, really, because being a Jehovah's Witness and then being in a relationship where someone does have so much control,
Yep.
you do abdicate your own decision making.
Yep.
So looking for a house for me right now is really difficult, because I don't I don't have to really consider anybody else's opinion except my own, and obviously what the mortgage company is going to approve. But just looking for a house is like, that's my decision of, and nobody is going to change it. And the fact that now I believe, or that I learned, that I'm enough, and that's that's enough. I'm enough. I
Hmm.
don't need to make other people happy to be happy myself.
Yep.
So that's just my favorite thing. And I got my first tattoo. My favorite thing is a phoenix,
Hmm.
because it's constantly reborn from like the ashes of its former self. So even like for all like the JWs, the XJWs that have left, people who leave, abusive relationships, or whatever, have shitty parents or whatever the situation may be, or even if they don't, maybe all of that stuff is great for you and it's like a fairy tale. But at some point, the person you are is going to have to disappear to become the person you have to be. And so that's why I love the Phoenix so much, because even if your life is great, you have to change and you have to adapt and you have to be better. And the XJWs who have burned down who they were to become better should be super duper proud of themselves.
I think that's a beautiful place to end it. I think that's what so many people are trying to do, trying to find their way. We've all had to burn down one life in order to start another, and nobody gets through this life unscathed. Ex Jehovah's Witnesses, we have our set of issues, our set of things to overcome, but it's not like we're the only people. And there are a lot of people out there that maybe have upbringings that weren't cult related, and they still have their own issues. Again, it gets getting back to the fact that nobody gets out of here unscathed. Everybody has challenges, and we get to show who we are and how we face those challenges. And so it's awesome to see that you are facing yours head on, and doing what it takes, getting involved in therapy and different things for yourself, so that you can be the best version of you that you can be. That's really at the end of the day. You're enough as presently constituted, but with that in mind, we're all still growing, and that's a beautiful thing. As always, I want to thank everybody that's brave enough to get on here and tell their story, so that they can help those that listen. And I hope that in listening back to it, you get a different perspective and can give a little more weight to what you experienced, and find some more healing. If you're listening, you can support today's guest by leaving a comment of support on the website at shunnedpodcast.com on the episodes page. While there, you can find the date for the next Shunned Recovery Project online meetup, reach out for one-on-one coaching to get moving on your new life, or buy some merch and rep the show. Visit my other site, xjwhelp.com, for helpful videos and a downloadable roadmap of life after leaving, as well as resources like meetups, books, and a lot more. Join the Facebook support group called Shunned Podcast. Find us on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and more as Shunned Podcast. Leave a review on iTunes or other podcast apps for both this and the original podcast, This JW Life, so that more people can find these stories and get the help that they need. Donating equals loving. So if you love these stories and find them helpful, please support the show at patreon.com/shunned. And there's some rewards there, and it really means a lot to me to see that people support what I'm doing, and it helps me to do more. The theme song for today is No Hell Yet by Fair Voyeur. And as I end all episodes, love others, do no harm, and go be happy.
We'll curse God and die.